Hundreds of millions of years before dinosaurs, our planet teemed with strange, terrifying life. Some of these creatures had teeth bigger than my fingers, and we still can't fully explain them. Their fossils tell stories of a world so wild, dangerous, and alien. I often think about what it must have been like back then. The oceans, instead of mouths and eyes, were full of clawed creatures. Giant insects flew in the dense air, and scaly monsters crawled out of the swamps, hunting in the silence. Some had armor, some had teeth bigger than your fingers, and some things we still can't explain. Most people assume dinosaurs were the first terrifying animals, but that's simply not the case. These earlier creatures were just as deadly and, in some ways, even stranger. New discoveries are constantly bringing them into the spotlight, revealing predators and survival tactics lost to time. I wonder what it was like to live in a world without grass, birds, or flowers, but full of armored fish and giant scorpions. We're talking about the Cambrian period, an epic chapter in Earth's history that began approximately 541 million years ago and lasted about 53 million years. It was a time when life exploded with an unprecedented burst of diversification. For most of Earth's history before this point, life was relatively simple. Single-celled organisms, or perhaps some rudimentary multicellular forms. But in the Cambrian, there was a sudden emergence of almost all the major animal types we recognize today, along with many unique and now extinct lineages. Among these strange and remarkable creatures, one stood out, casting a truly impressive shadow on its contemporaries. Anomalocaris, the undisputed top predator of the Cambrian seas. The history of Anomalocaris is as fascinating as the creature itself. It's a story of scientific puzzle solving and the gradual piecing together of a truly bizarre ancient animal from fragmentary fossil evidence. For many years, paleontologists excavated various fossil remains from the famous Burgess Shale in British Columbia, Canada, a place known for its exquisitely preserved soft-bodied fossils from the Middle Cambrian period. But these parts were puzzling. One fossil was interpreted as a shrimp-like creature, possessing a pair of large, spiny appendages that seemed ideal for grasping. Another, a round structure with diverging plates, was considered to be the mouth of some kind of jellyfish, or perhaps a primitive invertebrate related to modern sea cucumbers. Another fossil in the form of a disc was classified as a separate, free-swimming organism. They were all given separate names reflecting their different original interpretations. Anomalocaris canadensis for the grasping appendages, Peytoia nathorsti for the mouth part, and Lagania cambria for the body in the shape of a disc. The scientific community was understandably a little confused by these seemingly disparate finds. It wasn't until the 1980s, thanks to a careful review of existing fossils and the discovery of more complete specimens, that paleontologists Harry Whittington and Derek Briggs made a groundbreaking discovery. They found that what they once thought were three separate animals were actually parts of one much larger creature. The abnormal shrimp-like appendages were menacing, grasping limbs at the front of the animal's head. The jellyfish-like mouth was indeed its mouth, belonging to this giant predator, and the disc-shaped body was the main trunk of this truly unique organism. The discovery was akin to finding a dinosaur femur, then a tooth, and then a tail, only to realize that they all belonged to the same Tyrannosaurus rex. With this understanding, the true form of Anomalocaris began to emerge, revealing an animal that was surprisingly well adapted to its predatory lifestyle. So, what did this creature look like, and what made it such an effective hunter? Anomalocaris was a formidable animal, reaching a length of up to 60 centimeters, about 2 feet, which made it a true giant in a world where most creatures were only a few centimeters long. Its most striking features were 2 large, segmented, grasping appendages extending from the front of its head. These limbs were covered with sharp, blade-like spikes arranged in rows, which made them ideal tools to capture and manipulate prey. Imagine a pair of huge, articulated arms, each bristled with hooks, capable of snatching a struggling trilobite or other wretched, soft-bodied creature from the dark depths. Behind these menacing appendages was its round, radial mouth, often described as a pineapple ring or nutcracker. This mouth was unlike anything seen in modern animals, consisting of rings of solid, overlapping plates that could contract and expand. Although it had no real jaws, this mouth cone was clearly designed for biting and crushing. The inside of the mouth was lined with inward-facing, tooth-like structures, ensuring that once prey was captured, it had little chance of escape. The presence of bite marks on fossilized trilobite shells, a common find in the Cambrian, strongly supports the idea that Anomalocaris used this powerful mouth to crack the hardened exoskeletons of its victims. The body of Anomalocaris was segmented and streamlined with a series of large, wavy side blades on the sides. These blades, probably numbering up to 11 pairs, were used for movement in the water, allowing the animal to swim with graceful efficiency, like a cuttlefish or a stingray. It was this combination of powerful swimming abilities and formidable grasping appendages that made it a very agile and effective predator pursuer. At the very end of its body was a distinct fan-shaped tail, which helped even more with directional movement and quick bursts of speed. The preserved eyes of Anomalocaris, they tell such a story. To think they had vision comparable to dragonflies, or even superior. I can only imagine how invaluable that keen sight must have been in the dim, ancient oceans. To spot prey from a distance, to aim attacks with deadly accuracy, it's a picture of a perfect predator. As the largest, most heavily armed creature of its time, Anomalocaris dominated the Cambrian food web. Its diet likely consisted of trilobites, those armored arthropods scurrying along the seafloor, and other soft-bodied creatures so well preserved in the Burgess Shale. Even other anomalids, perhaps. Some trilobite fossils even show characteristic semicircular bite marks, pointing convincingly to Anomalocaris as the culprit. I picture it now, the dexterous Anomalocaris, spotting trilobites on the seabed, rushing down with its wavy fins, grabbing an unsuspecting victim with its spiny appendages and bringing it to its crushing mouth, perhaps even tearing off pieces before devouring it. The ecological role of Anomalocaris can't be overstated. Its existence demonstrates that the complex relationship between predator and prey, a fundamental driver of evolution, was already well established in the Cambrian. The pres exerted by such a powerful predator would have led to the evolution of protective adaptations in other creatures. hardened exoskeletons and trilobites, the development of spines, improved burrowing. This evolutionary arms race, initiated by the likes of Anomalocaris, was a key factor in the rapid diversification of life during the Cambrian explosion. Without pres from predators, the need for complex means of protection might not have been so acute, and the trajectory of early animal evolution might have been quite different. The classification of Anomalocaris has been a subject of considerable debate among paleontologists. It was originally placed in its own phylum, reflecting its unique and seemingly unclassifiable body plan. But as more fossils accumulated and our understanding of arthropod evolution deepened, many scientists now consider Anomalocaris and its relatives to be a stem group of arthropods. This means they're closely related to insects, spiders, and crustaceans, but separated before the common ancestor of modern arthropods. They have certain features, compound eyes, segmented bodies, that link them to the arthropods, but they lack the articulated walking legs characteristic of true arthropods. This placement makes them incredibly important for understanding the evolutionary origins of one of the most successful groups of animals on Earth. They represent an early experimental branch on the tree of life, demonstrating a variety of forms that appeared during the Cambrian. Anomalocaris reigned supreme during a significant part of the Middle Cambrian period. But, like many successful lineages, it eventually disappeared from the fossil record. The exact reasons for its extinction aren't entirely clear, but they may be associated with environmental changes, the emergence of new predators, or the rise of more efficient body plans among other animals. Whatever the cause, its disappearance marked the end of an era dominated by these magnificent alien predators. Anomalocaris is a monumental figure in the history of early life. It wasn't just a peculiar fossil, it was a living, breathing terror of the Cambrian seas, an apex predator that shaped the evolutionary trajectory of countless other species. Its discovery, a triumph of scientific reconstruction, revealed a being of enormous power and unique design, a testament to the innovative and often bizarre solutions that evolution can come up with. Anomalocaris reminds us that the past was a time of incredible biological experiments, and that even the most alien creatures can play a vital role in the grand narrative of life on Earth. Its legacy lives on not only in the fossil record, but also in our understanding of how complex ecosystems, driven by the eternal dance of predator and prey, first formed on our planet, laying the foundation for all the life that followed. It was, without a doubt, an extraordinary monster of an extraordinary time, a true icon of the Cambrian explosion. Stepping further into the fantastic menagerie of the Cambrian period, we encounter one creature that seems to defy conventional biology. An animal so completely unique and intricate that it once prompted a respected paleontologist to joke that its discoverer must have been suffering from hallucinations. This is Opabenia, a creature from the same sacred land, the Burgess Shale in British Columbia, but representing an even more serious problem for our understanding of evolutionary pathways. At the time, while Anomalocaris was a terrifying predator, Opabenia was simply strange. The story of Opabinia begins with Charles Doolittle Walcott, an American paleontologist who, in the early 1900s, almost single-handedly unearthed the incredible trove of fossils in the Burgess Shale. Walcott was an outstanding discoverer, and among the thousands of specimens he collected were delicate Opabinia fossils. However, it was only in the 1970s when the fossils were carefully re-examined by a team led by Harry B. When Whittington presented his reconstruction of Opabinia at Cambridge University, the room reportedly burst into laughter. I can only imagine the scene. Paleontologists, convinced he was either playing a joke or, as Whittington himself quipped, experiencing hallucinations. That reaction, I think, really does capture the strangeness of Opabinia. It posed a real problem for the existing biological framework. So what was it about this creature that caused such distrust? Let's delve into its truly bizarre anatomy. Its head was perhaps the most striking feature, dominated by two main elements. Firstly, it had not two, not three, but 5 bulbous eyes on stalks located all over its head. They were on short stalks, apparently providing a wide field of vision. This unusual number and arrangement defies anything we see in modern animals. Were they capable of complex vision, or perhaps a more rudimentary detection of light? The fossil record can't tell us for ye, but their prominence suggests they were important for the animal's survival. But perhaps even more striking than the quintet of eyes was a unique appendage extending from the front of its head. It was a long, flexible, trunk-like structure, almost like a vacuum cleaner hose, ending in a pair of menacing, spiky claws. This appendage is unlike anything seen in any known animal, living or extinct. It seems that it was very maneuverable, able to stretch and grab objects. This frontal appendage effectively served as part of the mouth, or at least as a means by which it delivered food to its mouth, which was located on the lower side of the head, facing backward between the first two segments. This arrangement is also very unusual and speaks to a unique feeding strategy. Moving away from the head, the body of Opabinia was segmented, consisting of 5 body segments. Each segment bore a pair of lateral lobes on the sides. These lobes were probably thin and flexible, slightly overlapping and protruding outward. They were almost certainly used for locomotion, allowing Opabinia to undulate its body and swim in this water with a graceful wave-like motion, much like Anomalocaris used its own blades. At the very end of its body, Opabinia had a tail fan consisting of 3 pairs of flat fin structures, which would provide stability and assist in control. On the upper surface of each body segment, slightly above the lateral lobes, there were trench-like structures. These delicate features, preserved as faint impressions, indicate that Opabinia was equipped with specialized respiratory organs for extracting oxygen from the water, something necessary for any active aquatic animal. The presence of these gills further emphasizes the complexity of this Cambrian creature. Given its unique anatomy, especially its trunk and 5 eyes, what can we infer about Opabinia's lifestyle and eating habits? It's generally accepted that Opabinia was a soft-bottom dweller, a creature that floated just above the sea floor. Its unique trunk with terminal claws suggests a specialized feeding method. It likely used this appendage to penetrate soft mud and sediment, looking for small, soft-bodied prey, such as worms or other small organisms that lived in the substrate. the small claws would be ideal for capturing these small animals, or perhaps to scoop up detritus and organic matter. Once captured, food would be carried by the flexible trunk to the backward-facing mouth on the underside of its head. It's unlikely that it hunted large, armored creatures. Its trunk, although effective for soft prey, was not designed for shell cracking. Its method of swimming, using side paddles, suggests that it was not a fast swimmer as Anomalocaris was, but rather capable of sustained wave-like motion, possibly allowing it to swim along the seabed or slowly move through the water in search of food. Its numerous eyes could give it an exceptionally wide field of vision, helping it navigate the complex underwater environment and potentially detect subtle movements of its hidden prey. The ecological niche of Opabinia was probably that of a generalist scavenger or a specialized micropredator, a sediment feeder. It likely played a role in bioturbation, loosening sediment as it searched for food. In the complex Cambrian food web, where trilobites grazed on microbial mats and Anomalocaris hunted them, Opabinia would have taken a distinct, perhaps less glamorous, but equally vital position. Perhaps the most enduring fascination with Opabinia lies in the deep evolutionary mysteries it presents. Its unique combination of features makes it extremely difficult to classify within any modern animal phylum. It doesn't fit into the arthropods, despite some superficial similarities such as segmentation, because it lacks the characteristic jointed legs and hardened exoskeleton. It doesn't belong to the mollusks or annelids or any other group we know of. This has led to considerable debate about its phylogenetic placement. Some paleontologists have suggested that Opabinia may represent a very early, highly divergent branch of the arthropod lineage, a stem group of arthropods which developed unique adaptations before the basic arthropod body plan hardened. Others have suggested that it may be related to a group called lobopods, worm-like creatures with short legs that are believed to be ancestors or close relatives of arthropods and tardigrades. However, even among lobopods, Opabinia is distinguished by its bizarre head appendages. The existence of Opabinia, along with other mysterious creatures of the Cambrian, challenges. I've always been drawn to the Cambrian explosion, that period when life seemed to be experimenting with every conceivable body plan. And perhaps no creature embodies that experimental spirit more than Opabinia. An animal with 5 eyes and a peculiar proboscis, it's a reminder that evolution isn't a straight line, but a branching, often unpredictable process. When I first saw an image of it, I was immediately captivated. Opabinia, or waxia as it's sometimes known, offers convincing evidence of just how experimental evolution was during that Cambrian period. There was such a rapid proliferation of diverse body plans, many unique and not resulting in any surviving lines. Opabinia is often cited as a striking example of this strange miracle, an animal with a body plan that seemed successful for a time, but ultimately became an evolutionary dead end. It didn't branch out into the enormous diversity of modern animals we see today. The tree of life has many long extinct branches, and evolution is not a linear development. Cambrian was a time of great evolutionary innovation, when nature seemed to be experiencing with a huge number of designs. Some, like Opabinia, were truly unique. The unusual appearance of the Opabinia has captured the public imagination and become an icon of paleontological discoveries. Its image, with those 5 eyes and peculiar proboscis, is often used in popular science books, documentaries, and museum exhibits to illustrate the strangeness of the Cambrian period. Artists have reveled in depicting this creature, trying to bring to life its alien form and imagine its movement in the ancient seas. It's a symbol of the unexpected diversity that the Earth has preserved throughout its deep history. Opabinia remains one of the most mysterious and fascinating creatures ever found in the fossil record. It wasn't a top predator like Anomalocaris, but rather a modest, quirky, and completely unique inhabitant of the Cambrian oceans. Its 5 eyes, its single proboscis ending in a claw, and its unique body structure challenge our preconceptions about what an animal should look like. Opabinia is a living question mark, evidence of the incredible, almost limitless creativity of evolution in the Cambrian explosion. It reminds us that the paths through which life unfolds can be much more varied and surprising than we can imagine. Our understanding of the Earth's ancient history is still constantly evolving, just like the strange creatures that once inhabited its primeval seas. It is a real miracle, a biological mystery that continues to delight and inspire, urging us to look deeper into forgotten chapters of the great story of life. Now, imagine a creature so bizarre, so completely alien that when scientists first came across its fossilized remains, they got it completely wrong. Not just a little wrong, but truly deeply wrong. This is the story of Hallucigenia, a tiny, mysterious inhabitant of the Cambrian seas, whose journey from fossil discovery to correct interpretation is a testament to the challenges and triumphs of paleontology. Its very name, derived from the word hallucination, hints at the dizzying confusion it caused. For years, the creature remained a mystery, a biological enigma from a time when life on Earth was still experimenting with a bewildering variety of body plans, many of which contradict our modern understanding of animal forms. The saga of Hallucigenia begins with the discovery of the Burgess Shale, a remarkable fossil site located high in the Canadian Rockies. Discovered in 1909 by Charles Doolittle Walcott, a distinguished paleontologist at the Smithsonian Institution, the Burgess Shale is a geological trove. Its unique preservation conditions, likely due to rapid burial in anoxic landslides, captured an extraordinary image of marine life approximately 508 million years ago. Unlike many fossil layers that preserve only hard parts of organisms, such as shells or bones, the Burgess Shale preserves soft tissues of countless creatures, offering unprecedented insight into the complexities of ecosystems of the early Cambrian period. In this ancient seabed, among a huge number of trilobites, sponges, and other recognizable forms, lay something bizarre and unknown, patiently waiting to be rediscovered. When Walcott first excavated the fossils that would eventually be named Hallucigenia, he acknowledged their uniqueness but grouped them with a larger segmented worm-like creature called Canadia. It became a poster child for the strange wonder of the Burgess Shale, an icon of a time when evolutionary experiments raged, producing forms that seem to have no modern analogues. But even as Hallucigenia adorned the covers of textbooks and museum exhibits, a quiet concern persisted among some paleontologists. The very strangeness of its supposed movement and defense mechanism seemed illogical, almost illogical from an evolutionary point of view. The true turning point in hallucigenia's history did not originate from the Burgess Shale itself, but from another unusual fossil site, and on the other side of the world. In the early 2000s, a collection of remarkably preserved fossils began to emerge from the Miao Tianshan Shale in Zhejiang, China. This Lagerstätte, slightly older than the Burgess Shale, also preserved soft-bodied organisms with stunning accuracy. Among thousands of specimens, paleontologists discovered creatures that bore a striking resemblance to hallucigenia. The difference, however, was crucial. These new fossils were preserved in 3 dimensions, offering a much clearer view of their anatomy than the flattened, 2-dimensional samples from the Burgess Shale. What the Chinese fossils showed was nothing short of revolutionary. When viewed from the side, it became obvious that structures previously interpreted as legs were actually spines, and the structures thought to be spines were actually strong paired legs, each of which ended in a series of small claw-like structures. Hallucigenia had lived its paleontological life completely upside down. The bulbous head was merely a product of decomposition, an artifact of petrification. The real head of Hallucigenia was surprisingly small and fuzzy. It sat at the opposite end from what we first thought were its rear appendages. This complete reversal, it became a turning point in how we understood this strange creature. Suddenly, it all started to make much more sense. I realized it had 7 pairs of strong legs, each with claws, perfect for moving steadily along the seabed. And along its back, facing upward, were 7 pairs of formidable spikes, likely for protection from predators. This new perspective transformed what seemed like a clumsy, illogical oddity into a plausible, though still peculiar, inhabitant of those ancient oceans. It was a classic example of how new evidence, even from different places, can radically change our understanding of past life. I remember when I first read about this, I was struck by how easily we can misinterpret the past. The initial confusion wasn't due to bad observation, but rather the inherent problems of interpreting flattened, 2-dimensional fossil remains where the 3-dimensional context is lost. With the correct orientation established, scientists could finally delve into the biology of hallucigenia and its place in the tree of life. Those paired legs with claws immediately suggested a connection with a group of invertebrates known as lobopods, or worms with paddle feet. This is a diverse group of worm-like creatures with fleshy, non-jointed legs. Modern examples include onychophorans, also known as velvet worms, and tardigrades or water bears, both charming creatures with ancient lineages. Reimagining hallucigenia decisively positioned it as an early, spiny member of the lobopod lineage, probably a stem group arthropod. That means it belonged to a larger group that eventually gave rise to arthropods, insects, spiders, and crustaceans, but it diverged before the evolution of true jointed legs and hard exoskeletons. This connection was so significant because it helped bridge the gap between early worm-like ancestors and the incredibly diverse arthropods that dominate so much of Earth's biodiversity today. Imagining the life of Hallucigenia with its newly understood anatomy becomes much clearer. It was small, usually no more than a few centimeters in length, and its numerous stocky legs suggest it was a slow-moving bottom dweller, probably scuttling along the muddy seabed. The presence of those formidable dorsal spines strongly suggests that defense was a primary concern. In Cambrian ecosystems, predators such as Anomalocaris, the fearsome top predator of its time, prowled the landscape in search of prey. The spines of Hallucigenia would make it a prickly, unattractive meal for any budding predator. Its mouth, although small and somewhat unclear in most fossils, probably was used to collect detritus or perhaps for filter feeding small particles from the water column. Some recent interpretations even suggest that it might have had a ring of tiny teeth around the mouth, suggesting a more active feeding strategy, perhaps scraping algae or other organic matter from the substrate. Despite remarkable breakthroughs in understanding Hallucigenia, some secrets remain. The exact function of the small, delicate appendages at its rear end remains somewhat unclear, although it's believed they're related to its tail, or perhaps were involved in adhesion to substrates. The exact number of legs and spines may also vary slightly among specimens. A common problem with fossil preservation is that not every part of each individual is perfectly preserved. However, the core understanding of its inverted anatomy and its lobopod affiliation are now firmly established. The story of Hallucigenia serves as a powerful reminder of several key aspects of paleontology. Firstly, it highlights the often treacherous path to understanding ancient life. Fossils are rarely complete, and fossilization processes can distort and flatten organisms in such a way that their original form becomes incredibly difficult to discern. What seems obvious in one orientation may be complete misinformation in another. Second, it highlights the collaborative and iterative nature of scientific discovery. Re-examining old collections combined with new discoveries from different places can lead to revolutionary discoveries. It's a process of continuous refinement and revision as new evidence emerges. Finally, Hallucigenia is a powerful symbol of the extraordinary evolutionary experiments that characterized the Cambrian explosion. This relatively short period in Earth's history, spanning tens of millions of years, witnessed the rapid diversification of the animal world and the emergence of most of the basic body plans of animals observed today. Hallucigenia, with its unique combination of features, is evidence of the strange and wonderful forms that arose during this turning point. This creature continues to fascinate, not only with its bizarre appearance, but also because its journey from confusion to clarity embodies the very essence of paleontological research, a relentless pursuit of understanding the astonishing diversity of life that has adorned our planet throughout time. It reminds us that the past was often much stranger and more varied than we can imagine. Among the countless amazing fossils extracted from the Burgess Shale, one creature stands out, not for its outlandish strangeness, but for its absolute omnipresence and delicate beauty. Morella. While other inhabitants of the Burgess Shale, such as the formidable Anomalocaris or the bewildering hallucigenia, attract attention with their unique anatomies, Morella offers a different kind of charm. This is a commoner, an everyday citizen of the Cambrian seabed, and its huge quantity gives a decisive idea of the abundance and ecological structure of these ancient marine ecosystems. Its presence in such staggering quantities speaks to its success in a world that was rapidly becoming filled with diverse and developing forms of life. Morella splendens, to give it its full scientific name, is a small creature similar to an arthropod, usually only the size of— I've spent years studying the Burgess Shale, and there's one creature that always captures my imagination: the Morella splendens. Tens of thousands of specimens have been recovered, making it by far the most widespread fossil found there. This numerical superiority tells us something profound about the Cambrian ecosystem. Morella, it seems, was a very successful creature. This small arthropod, only a few centimeters in length, has a striking head shield and delicate, feathery gills. The head is covered by a helmet-like shield with two main parts: a wide curved plate extending backward and two curved spines projecting forward, almost like horns or antennae. This gives Morella a regal, even alien appearance, despite its small size. Behind this complex head shield, the body is segmented, typical for arthropods, with about 26 segments. Each segment has a pair of delicate, branched appendages which likely performed several functions. The internal branch of each appendage was probably a leg used for locomotion on the seabed, while the outer branch was a feathery gill used for breathing. This bilateral appendage is a common feature among early arthropods and reflects an effective adaptation to life in the marine environment. When Charles Doolittle Walcott, the discoverer of the Burgess Shale, began carefully collecting and classifying fossils from the site, Morella quickly became one of the most common and well-preserved organisms. This incredible abundance tells us that Morella occupied a significant niche in the food web and played a key role in ecosystem dynamics. Its prevalence hints at a creature that effectively reproduced, possibly fed on readily available resources, and was well adapted to its environment. Given its abundance, Morella was likely a bottom-dwelling inhabitant, scurrying about the muddy or sandy seabed using its numerous leg-like appendages. Its small size would have allowed it to move through cracks and feed on detritus, decaying organic matter, or perhaps filter tiny food particles from the water column. Its feathery gills would effectively extract oxygen from the ancient seawater. I often imagine vast tracts of the Cambrian seafloor teeming with these small creatures busily going about their lives, forming a living carpet of life that contributed significantly to the ecosystem's biomass. Their presence would have been as commonplace as crabs on a modern beach. Despite its clear affiliation with the arthropods, the exact phylogenetic position of Morella in that huge and diverse family tree is still debated among paleontologists. It has features characteristic of early arthropods, such as a segmented body, exoskeleton, though not as heavily mineralized as in later arthropods, and articulated appendages. However, it also lacks certain defining characteristics of specific groups of arthropods. For example, it doesn't fit into the main subphyla of arthropods, such as chelicerates, spiders, scorpions, myriapods, millipedes, centipedes, or crustaceans, crabs and lobsters. For many years, Morella, along with other mysterious early arthropods, was considered a stem group of arthropods, an organism belonging to a broader line that led to modern arthropods but diverged before the evolution of the specific traits that define modern groups. Some researchers even suggested that it represents a distinct extinct lineage altogether, highlighting the incredible diversity and experimental nature of the early evolution of arthropods. Its classification continues to be refined as new studies and comparative analyses are conducted, highlighting the difficulties of tracking evolutionary lines in deep time. The significance of Morella goes far beyond its own unique biology. It serves as a prime example of the extraordinary preservation conditions of the Burgess Shale itself. The Burgess Shale is what paleontologists call a Lagerstätte, a German term meaning storage place. These are rare fossil sites where exceptional preservation occurs, often preserving soft-bodied organisms or delicate structures due to very rapid burial in anoxic, fine-grained sediments. The conditions that led to the formation of the Burgess Shale, deep-sea landslides that carried organisms down the slopes and stored them in oxygen-poor environments, effectively sealed them from scavengers and decomposition, which allowed the preservation of even the most fragile parts, such as delicate gills. Without such exceptional preservation, creatures like Morella, which had no hard, solid parts, probably wouldn't have left any fossils at all. Thus, Morella, in its countless quantity, is not just a fossil in itself, but also evidence of the unique geological circumstances that allowed us to look into a 500-million-year-old ecosystem with such clarity. In the noisy Cambrian food web, Morella probably played the role of a detritivore, or perhaps a suspension filter feeder. This means that it would feed on decaying organic matter that settled on the seabed or filter small particles from the water. Being a relatively small and common creature, it, in turn, would have been an important food source for larger predators such as Anomalocaris and other carnivores that prowled the ancient seas. So, Morella's success wasn't just about its ability to survive. It was about its ability to thrive in such numbers that it became a vital component of the ecosystem's energy flow. Its biomass would support many other creatures higher up the food chain, highlighting its fundamental role in the Cambrian ecosystem. The lasting legacy of Morella is its contribution to our understanding of the Cambrian explosion. This remarkable period, from about 540 to 520 million years ago, represents a turning point in the history of life on Earth. During the Cambrian explosion, almost all modern animal phyla appeared. I've always been drawn to the Cambrian explosion. It was a period when animal body structures first appeared in the fossil record. The Big Bang led to the rapid development of complex animals. Bilateral symmetry, specialized organs, and diverse lifestyles all seemed to emerge at once. Mela, a fossil abundant and well-preserved from this era, offers tangible evidence of this explosion of life. She shows us a creature that thrived, spread widely, and represented an early branch of the incredibly successful line of arthropods. They eventually colonized nearly every habitat on Earth. Her existence reflects the dramatic evolutionary innovations of that time. By studying Mela, paleontologists like myself can glean insights into the ancient environment. Her sheer numbers suggest a stable, productive environment, at least periodically, capable of supporting a large population of these small organisms. The characteristics of her limbs, especially the gills, hint at the oxygen levels in the water and the type of substrate she inhabited. Comparing Mela with other early arthropods, potential relatives found in the Burgess Shale and other Cambrian sites, allows scientists to piece together the pathways that led to the incredible variety of arthropods we see today. It helps answer questions about how articulated limbs developed, how exoskeletons evolved, and how different feeding and breathing strategies arose in early life. Even a seemingly ordinary fossil like Mela is far from it. It's a powerful tool for understanding fundamental processes in evolution and ecology. It helps us visualize the vibrant, complex communities that existed hundreds of millions of years ago. Though Mela isn't as striking as some of her more famous counterparts from the Burgess Shale, she provides crucial numerical context. She reveals that alongside the strange and unique, there were also the incredibly successful and numerous creatures that formed the foundation of these early marine ecosystems. Her story is one of quiet success, a testament to the power of adaptation and the fundamental role of countless individuals in shaping the ancient world. A modest arthropod crawling along the Cambrian seafloor offers us a profound glimpse into the dawn of animal life on our planet. Now, picture a time long ago, when Earth was just finding its footing and the oceans held real power. There was something magnificent and, frankly, a little terrifying that ruled undivided. The Eurypterids, often called sea scorpions, though perhaps with a touch of nervous affection, they were unlike anything you'd find on a beach today. These were arthropods of colossal size. Some reached lengths that would dwarf a modern person. We're talking about creatures that could stretch over 8 feet, a size almost unimaginable for an invertebrate. They existed for an incredibly long stretch of Earth's history, appearing in the Ordovician period, flourishing in the Silurian and Devonian, and eventually disappearing during the Permian period, leaving behind a legacy of fascinating fossils. Their name, Eurypterid, comes from the ancient Greek, meaning wide wing, a nod to their broad, paddle-like limbs. But don't let that gentle name fool you. They were formidable predators, adapted to various aquatic environments. Though they began primarily in the salty depths of the ocean millions of years ago, some lineages made the bold, or perhaps necessary, crossing into brackish waters, the kind found where rivers meet the sea, and even ventured into freshwater lakes and rivers. This adaptability speaks to their evolutionary success, allowing them to spread across various niches and become dominant figures in their respective ecosystems. When you imagine a Eurypterid, banish any thoughts of a small, docile creature. Think big, think armored. Their bodies were segmented, like an insect or a lobster, protected by a tough outer shell, an exoskeleton that they shed periodically as they grew. This molting process would leave them vulnerable, soft, and susceptible to any opportunistic predators lurking nearby. Their head, or prosoma, was a shield-shaped plate, beneath which lay a complex array of appendages. They typically had 6 pairs of limbs. The first pair, called chelicerae, were often small and claw-like, used for grasping food. The next few pairs were walking legs, helping them crawl along the seafloor, but it was the last pair that often captures attention. Wide, flat paddles, ideal for propelling their massive bodies through the water. It was these broad wings that gave them surprising agility for their size. And then, at the very end of their segmented body, was the tail, or telson, which varied greatly among different species. For some, it was a simple spike. For others, it was flattened and paddle-shaped, adding to their swimming prowess. Some species even possessed a stinger, similar to that of a scorpion, though whether it secreted venom is still debated by scholars. Perhaps it was used more for balance, or perhaps for anchoring in the sediment. One of the most famous, and certainly one of the largest of these giants, was Echolopterus rhenanii, a true titan of the ancient world discovered in Germany. Fossil evidence suggests that this monster could reach an astonishing length of up to 8 feet and 2 inches. Imagine encountering something like that, lurking in the murky waters of the Devonian period. Its size would have made it an apex predator, capable of hunting a wide range of marine life, including early fish and even other, smaller eurypterids. Another impressive giant was Pterotaspis. Some estima I find myself returning to the image of a sea scorpion, a thought that sends shivers down my spine even now. These weren't the small creatures we might find under a rock today. We're talking about undisputed rulers of their domains, some stretching over 5 feet. Much like the sharks of our modern oceans, they were apex predators, their anatomy a testament to their hunting prowess. Their chelicerae, though sometimes small, were incredibly strong, perfectly adapted for tearing apart their prey. Some species even boasted powerful, crushing claws. I imagined them ambushing their prey, using those powerful swimming blades to surge forward, crushing any hapless victim in their path. Those eyes, often large and complex, much like those of modern insects, would have granted them exceptional vision, a necessity for hunting in the dim aquatic environments they inhabited. They were opportunistic eaters, likely devouring anything they could get their claws on: trilobites, other crustaceans, even the early smaller fish. As fish evolved and grew larger, so, I suspect, did the sea scorpion's ambitions. It's even been suggested that some eurypterids might have been cannibals, hunting their own kind, especially during vulnerable molting periods. The life cycle of these eurypterids, while not fully understood, likely involved a series of molts. Young eurypterids hatched from eggs, perhaps deposited in sandy or silty substrates, and grew by shedding their exoskeletons multiple times throughout their lives. Each molt allowed them to increase in size and develop more complex features, eventually reaching those colossal adult sizes. It's a process common among arthropods, and it was key to their growth and survival. The evolutionary history of eurypterids is equally fascinating. They belong to a group called Chelicerata, which also includes modern spiders, scorpions, ticks, and mites. This means that our creepy, crawly friends today, share ancient common ancestry with these magnificent sea scorpions. Some scientists even propose that land scorpions may have evolved from a eurypterid ancestor that made the leap from water to land. The similarities in their body structure, especially their segmented bodies and telsons, certainly lend credence to this idea. The transition from an aquatic to a terrestrial environment is a huge evolutionary step, requiring significant adaptations. Modified respiratory systems, gills evolving into lungs, and stronger limbs to support weight without the buoyancy of water. Although not all eurypterids made this transition, their existence in brackish and freshwater environments suggests they were pre-adapted to life outside a purely marine environment. Fossil discoveries have been key to piecing together the history of these ancient giants. The largest species of Dunkleosteus, D. terrelli, is estimated to have reached lengths of up to 33 feet, comparable to some modern whale sharks. Its weight is estimated at around 4 tons. I try to imagine something so large, heavily armored, and designed for predation cruising through those ancient seas. It would have been both awe-inspiring and terrifying. That enormous size, combined with formidable armor, made it virtually invulnerable to attack from anything else in its environment. It was at the very top of the food chain, the true king of its domain. Dunkleosteus didn't have teeth as we understand them. Instead, its jaws were equipped with 2 long, bony cutting blades, essentially sharpened protrusions of its armored head plates. These self-sharpening plates interlocked, creating a powerful scissor-like bite that could slice through flesh and bone with terrifying efficiency. The mechanics of its jaw were also unique. Unlike many modern fish, Dunkleosteus could open its mouth incredibly quickly, in just 50 milliseconds. This rapid gape created a powerful suction, drawing unsuspecting prey into its cavernous mouth before they even had a chance to react. Once inside, those bony blades did their work, tearing and crushing their victims. Research on fossil fragments of jaws has allowed scientists to estimate the bite force of Dunkleosteus, and the numbers are striking. It's believed to have had one of the most powerful bites of any animal that ever lived on Earth, potentially exerting a force of up to 8,000 pounds per square inch at the tips of its blades. To put that into perspective, that bite force is greater than that of Tyrannosaurus rex and comparable to some of the largest modern crocodiles. Such a devastating bite would allow Dunkleosteus to easily dispatch any prey it encountered, from other armored fishes to early sharks. Dunkleosteus was a true marine generalist predator, meaning it would hunt anything it could overcome. Its diet probably included other placoderms, early sharks, and many smaller, less armored fish that inhabited the Devonian oceans. The presence of crushed and broken bones in its fossilized stomach contents further confirms its role as a cruel and effective hunter. Given its enormous size and powerful bite, it's not unreasonable to imagine that Dunkleosteus engaged in combat with other large predators, even with its own kind, especially over territory or the best hunting grounds. The heavy armor on its head would have provided crucial defense during such clashes. The body of Dunkleosteus, outside its armored head, is less well preserved in the fossil record because it was cartilaginous, meaning it didn't fossilize as easily as bone. However, reconstructions based on more complete placoderm fossils show that it had a torpedo-shaped body, a shape well suited for quick bursts of speed to ambush prey. Its powerful tail fin would have provided the thrust needed for these rapid attacks, making it an agile predator despite its enormous size and heavy armor. Fossils of Dunkleosteus have been found mainly in North America, especially in the Cleveland shale deposits of Ohio. Hence the name of the species, Dunkleosteus terrelli, named after J. Terrell, a local fossil collector. These deposits represent ancient. I've always been fascinated by the great extinctions. Danlosteus, that armored giant of the Devonian, vanished during one of these events, a series of catastrophes that decimated marine life. Imagine it. A true armored death machine, gone. Its legacy written only in the ancient seabeds. The sheer volume of fossil material we've found speaks to how dominant Danlosteus was in its world. The Devonian period, after all, was a time of incredible diversification for fish, the dawn of jawed and bony fish. And Danlosteus stood at the very top. Its existence shows us the incredible evolutionary experiments that took place in those ancient oceans. Placoderms with their unique armor thrived for millions of years, but their time, like all reigns, eventually ended. While the exact causes of the late Devonian extinctions are debated, many believe climate change played a role. The expansion of land plants led to increased nutrient runoff, causing widespread oxygen depletion in the oceans. Danlosteus, so specialized and dependent on a thriving ecosystem, may have been particularly vulnerable. As its food dwindled and its habitat changed, this mighty predator, along with all other placoderms, disappeared. Today, Danlosteus remains a powerful symbol, a testament to the incredible diversity of life that once existed. Its impressive fossils remind us of a time when armored giants ruled the oceans. The story of its unique adaptations and ultimate extinction continues to captivate scientists and enthusiasts alike. Vast, ancient oceans, so different from the world we know now, teemed with life long before creatures dared to venture onto land. It was in these primeval seas, during the Devonian period, often called the Age of Fish, that some of the most resilient predators began their evolutionary journey. Among these pioneers, Cladozalacha stands out. It's not just a fascinating fossil discovery, but a key piece in understanding shark evolution. To truly grasp its significance, picture yourself 370 million years ago, when the continents were arranged differently and marine ecosystems were undergoing a profound transformation. The story of early sharks, the genesis of cartilaginous fishes, is a tale written in the fossil record, albeit one with its own unique challenges. Unlike creatures with strong bony skeletons, sharks have skeletons made primarily of cartilage, a fragile material that rarely survives the test of time. Complete shark fossils from these ancient eras are incredibly rare, often consisting of individual teeth, scales, or vertebral fragments. Yet Cladozalache is a remarkable exception. Found mainly in the Cleveland shale of Ohio, its fossils are unusually well preserved, sometimes revealing not just skeletal outlines, but imprints of soft tissues like muscle fibers, skin, and even internal organs. These findings have provided paleontologists with an unprecedented glimpse into the anatomy and lifestyle of one of the earliest sharks. Imagine a creature of modest size, perhaps reaching up to 2 meters in length, though most specimens are smaller, around 1 meter. Its body was streamlined and torpedo-shaped, hinting at an active predatory lifestyle in open waters. Cladocelach possessed features that, though primitive by modern shark standards, clearly identify it as an ancient relative of the top predators we know today. Its skin was covered in small, pointed scales, similar to the dermal denticles that give modern sharks their rough, sandpaper-like texture. However, these scales were simpler in structure, lacking the complex layers of their modern counterparts. One of the most striking features was the arrangement of its fins. It had 2 prominent dorsal fins, each preceded by a sharp, robust spine, likely offering protection from larger predators, a common feature in some ancient shark lineages. The pectoral fins were wide and triangular, attached to the body by a broad base, suggesting a more rigid attachment than the flexible, maneuverable fins of modern sharks. This design probably provided lift and stability, but perhaps less agility for sharp turns. Pelvic fins were also present, along with a distinctly heterocircle tail, where the upper lobe was longer than the lower. Designed for powerful propulsion, this tail configuration is a hallmark of fast-swimming sharks, a sign of its active pursuit strategy. Now, let's look at the business end of this ancient predator, its mouth and teeth. Cladocelach's teeth were relatively small, multi-cusped, and lacked the continuous replacement seen in modern sharks. Instead, its teeth were somewhat fixed in place. Imagine walking along an ancient seabed, the press of millions of years pressing down. That's where the story of Cladocelach begins to come alive for me. This early shark, found so remarkably preserved in the Cleveland Shale, offers a glimpse into a world teeming with life, unlike anything we see today. The very existence of its fossils is a testament to unique geological conditions, an anoxic seabed where scavengers couldn't easily decompose remains. And because of those conditions, we can see details not just of the skeleton, but even hints of muscles and circulatory systems. The significance of Cladocelach extends far beyond its individual characteristics. It represents a fundamental branch in the evolutionary tree of sharks. Its blend of primitive and advanced traits offers critical insights into the development of key shark characteristics. For instance, its broad fins, while different from those of modern sharks, still show an early adaptation for controlled swimming. The presence of dorsal spines and a powerful tail suggests an active open ocean lifestyle right from the start of shark evolution. This demonstrates that the basic body plan of a fast-swimming predator was established surprisingly early in the lineage. The Devonian period saw a surge in the diversity of early fish-like sharks, though not all are classified as true sharks in the same lineage as modern forms. Some, like the Cantadians, were superficially shark-like, but had bony skeletons and protruding spines. Other placoderms were heavily armored fish that dominated many marine ecosystems before more mobile predators arose. True sharks, the chondrichthyes, slowly but found their niche. They were characterized by cartilaginous skeletons, placoid scales, and unique tooth replacement mechanisms, features that over millions of years would prove surprisingly successful. The evolutionary press on these early sharks were immense. They shared waters with many other fish groups, including heavily armored placoderms, ray-finned fishes, and lobe-finned fish that would eventually give rise to land vertebrates. Survival in this highly competitive environment demanded efficiency in both predation and avoiding becoming prey. The agile, fast-swimming form of Cladocelache and its relatives represents an adaptation to an environment where speed and effective hunting strategies were paramount. While their teeth may not have been as menacing as those of a great white shark, they were ideal for catching the smaller, more numerous fish and invertebrates that formed the base of the food chain. One of the most remarkable aspects of shark evolution is the stability of their basic body plan. Although Cladocelache might seem somewhat alien compared to a modern hammerhead or tiger shark, the fundamental elements, the streamlined, spindle-shaped body, paired fins, powerful tail, and sharp teeth, were already in place. Over hundreds of millions of years, these features have been refined, diversified, and specialized, resulting in the incredible variety of shapes and sizes we see today, from the colossal whale shark to the tiny dwarf lantern shark. The cartilaginous skeleton, often considered a primitive feature, turned out to be an evolutionary advantage, providing greater flexibility and reduced weight, allowing for rapid acceleration and maneuverability. The Devonian period was also a time of significant global change. Continents shifted, sea levels fluctuated, and major extinctions periodically reshaped the biosphere. Yet, time and again, the shark lineage demonstrated extraordinary resilience. While many other groups of fish and marine life succumbed to these environmental shocks, sharks in their various forms managed to survive, adapt, and often thrive. This long-term survival is a testament to the reliability of their evolutionary strategy and the inherent efficiency of their design as predators. The story of Cladocelache is not just a chapter in the history of sharks, it's a foundational text. It offers a glimpse into a lineage that has persisted for approximately 400 million years, witnessing the rise and fall of dinosaurs, the emergence of mammals, and countless changes that have transformed our planet. From the ancient waters of the Devonian, Cladocelache emerges, a silent testament to the power of natural selection and a harbinger of the fearsome predators that would one day rule the oceans. Its fossilized remains, discovered and carefully studied, continue to reveal secrets about the early days of life at sea, providing a tangible connection to a world utterly different from our own, yet one that laid the foundation for the biodiversity we cherish today. Understanding Cladocelache is understanding the beginning of a success story that continues to unfold in the vast blue expanse of our world's oceans. The story of life on Earth is one of incredible adaptation. I'm fascinated by the evolutionary changes that, over millions of years, have radically altered our planet's ecosystems. And at the center of this extraordinary narrative, there's one creature that always captures my imagination: Tiktaalik. It wasn't a terrifying monster, but a true pioneer. It was an evolutionary bridge, blurring the boundary between fish and the first creatures to colonize land. Its discovery was a turning point in paleontology, providing tangible evidence of the incredible steps life took to conquer the terrestrial environment. To truly appreciate Tiktaalik, I find myself imagining the end of the Devonian period, roughly 375 million years ago. The Earth was so different then. The continents were grouped into the supercontinent Laurasia, and shallow freshwater swamps and winding rivers dominated the landscape. The land, though sparsely covered with vegetation compared to today, was no longer barren. Early mosses, ferns, and primitive trees formed a lush, moist environment along the water's edge. The air was rich in oxygen, a byproduct of photosynthetic life. In the aquatic world, especially in these small, stagnant bodies of water, life was in full swing, but it was also full of problems. Oxygen levels in the water could fluctuate wildly, and competition for resources was fierce. It was precisely in these difficult conditions that a remarkable line of lobe-finned fish began to develop adaptations that would one day allow their descendants to walk on dry land. For many years, the fossil record represented a significant gap between fully aquatic fishes and the earliest four-legged vertebrates, or tetrapods. This gap has often been called the missing link, a term which, though popular, may be misleading since evolution is a continuous branching process rather than a linear chain. However, the search for transitional fossils which exhibited both fish-like and quadrupedal features continued, driven by a desire to understand the precise mechanisms of this incredible transition. Then, in 2004, a group of paleontologists led by Neil Shubin, Edward Deichler, and Farish Jenkins made a spectacular discovery on Ellesmere Island in the Canadian Arctic. In the red beds of the Fram Formation, they discovered the remarkably well-preserved remains of a creature that perfectly matched the daeon of a transitional form, Tiktaalik rosei. The name Tiktaalik itself comes from the Inuktitut language, meaning large, shallow water fish, a fitting tribute to both its habitat and its key role in evolutionary history. The significance of this find immediately became obvious to the scientific community. Let's look at the anatomy of Tiktaalik, because it is precisely in its unique combination of features that its importance lies. At first glance, Tiktaalik would resemble a large, somewhat flattened fish, possibly between 2 and 3 meters in length. It had scales and fins, distinctive features of its fish origin. However, a closer inspection reveals a set of features that were unambiguously tetrapod. Its most striking feature was a flattened skull that differed from the conic, hydrodynamic heads of typical fishes. This flattened skull, with eyes located on top, strongly suggests that Tiktaalik spent a significant amount of time looking upward, perhaps lying in ambush in the shallow water, peering out of the water, or even moving along muddy substrates. Even more convincing were its chest fins. Although they were still fins, they were surprisingly strong and contained bones homologous to the carpal bones and simple fingers found in the limbs of land animals. In contrast to the fins of most fish, which are supported by thin fin rays, Tiktaalik's fins were more muscular and flexible, capable of supporting the weight of its body. This anatomical structure strongly suggests that Tiktaalik could use its front fins to prop itself up, push itself forward, or even walk on the shallow bottom, or perhaps haul itself out of the water for a short time onto the banks or logs. It didn't walk like a lizard, but it certainly had a much more capable form of locomotion on solid ground than any fish before it. In addition, Tiktaalik had larger interconnected ribs that were much stronger than those of typical fish. These strong ribs would have provided crucial support to its internal organs against the pull of gravity outside the water, a problem that aquatic creatures never face. The presence of a flexible neck is another deviation from the anatomy of fishes, allowing Tiktaalik to move its head independently of its body, an important adaptation for navigating complex three-dimensional environments such as a swampy floodplain where it would have to look around for food or predators. Fish, on the contrary, usually move with their whole body to change direction. The environment in which Tiktaalik lived was key to understanding its evolutionary trajectory. These were small, murky, and often oxygen-poor waters. The ability to emerge from the water briefly, or at least breathe air at the surface, would provide significant advantages by avoiding aquatic predators in areas too shallow for them. Seeking new food sources such as insects and early invertebrates thriving on land, or simply surviving periods of low oxygen levels in stagnant bodies of water. This could have exerted a powerful selective press. Tiktaalik's ability to use its fins to prop itself up would be invaluable in such circumstances, allowing it to access oxygen-rich air above the water's surface. The discovery of Tiktaalik was a revelation. It was as if I were looking at a perfect mosaic, a blend of fish and tetrapod characteristics, a true transitional form. This creature, almost certainly spending much of its life in water, possessed the anatomical prerequisites that would eventually lead to the diversification of terrestrial vertebrates. It was compelling evidence of the evolutionary path from fins to limbs, from gills to lungs, and from a fully aquatic existence to life on land. Tiktaalik holds a place of immense importance in the broader context of evolution. It fits so neatly into the fossil record, bridging the gap between earlier lobe-finned fishes like Eusthenopteron and the first true amphibians such as Ichthyostega and Acanthostega. Eusthenopteron, a more fully aquatic fish, already possessed the basic skeletal elements that would eventually develop into limbs, but its fins remained very fish-like. Ichthyostega and Acanthostega, though still closely tied to the water, exhibited fully formed limbs with fingers suggesting a more terrestrial or at least amphibious existence. Tiktaalik represents that decisive intermediate step, showcasing the evolutionary changes that occurred as fins became stronger, more limb-like, and as the skull and ribcage adapted for life outside of water. The challenges of transitioning to land were enormous. Breathing, for one. Gills are effective in water but useless in air. Lungs were essential. Now imagine Hyneria. A true leviathan of its era, this freshwater apex predator dominated the rivers and estuaries of what would one day become Pennsylvania in the United States, about 365 million years ago. To imagine Hyneria is to imagine a creature of enormous scale, a true hunter in a world where vertebrates were still mainly confined to the aquatic environment, though they stood on the very threshold of their great terrestrial exodus. The presence of its fossils in the record paints a vivid picture of a dynamic and often dangerous ecosystem, evidence of the relentless march of evolution and the remarkable diversity of life that has graced our planet. Haineria is a monumental example of the adaptive success of lobe-finned fishes, a group that occupies a particularly important place in the grand narrative of the history of life, foreshadowing the emergence of all land vertebrates. The story of Haineria is one of painstaking geological detective work, and the thrill of knowing that something truly exceptional has been found. The first fragments of this colossal fish were discovered and described by Alfred Sherwood Romer in 1941. Romer, a renowned paleontologist, had the insight to recognize that these scattered remains belonged to a large and formidable sarcopterygian, or lobe-finned fish, although the full scale of its size and significance remained somewhat elusive at the time. For decades, Haineria remained primarily a name in scientific literature, a tantalizing but incomplete testament. The real breakthrough came much later, especially in the mid-1990s. A series of excavations near the town of Hainer in north-central Pennsylvania began to reveal more substantial fossil material. This region, especially the Catskill Formation outcrop, is a paleontological trove, preserving the remains of an ancient river delta system from the late Devonian period. It was during these sustained efforts, led by paleontologists such as Dr. Edward B. Deichler of the Academy of Natural Sciences and Drexel University, that more complete skeletal elements of Haineria began to emerge. These later discoveries included significant portions of its skull, jaws, and parts of its distinctive paired fins. Each new bone added another piece to the puzzle, allowing scientists to reconstruct a much more accurate and impressive image of this ancient predator. The painstaking work of extracting these fossils from the ancient red beds, thoroughly cleaning them, and then studying their complex anatomical details was a labor of love. It was through these focused efforts that Haineria slowly emerged from the stone, transforming from a collection of mysterious fragments into a majestic and formidable creature that once dominated its aquatic domain. The fossil sites themselves offer a window into a bygone world, with layers of rock revealing not only the bones of Haineria, but also the remains of other fish, early amphibians, and plant life, all contributing to a comprehensive understanding of its environment. When we try to reconstruct Haineria's appearance, the first word that comes to mind is impressive. Estimates indicate that this freshwater giant could have reached a length of 10 to 12 feet, and some particularly optimistic figures even bring it closer to 14 feet, making it one of the largest known fish of the Devonian period. To put this into perspective, imagine a fish the length of a small car, gliding through ancient river systems. Its body was strong and muscular, indicating enormous power, especially in its tail, which propelled it through the water with explosive force. Haineria's most striking features, however, would have been its massive head and menacing jaws. The skull was large, and within its wide mouth were rows of razor-sharp, dagger-like teeth designed to capture and hold large prey. Some of these teeth were quite substantial, clearly designed for a diet of large animals. Adding to its predatory arsenal, Hyneria possessed a series of smaller, needle-shaped teeth lining the roof of its mouth, which further end that once prey was caught, escape was almost impossible. The scales of Hyneria were truly remarkable, not just for show, but for serious protection. They were these fat, bony ganoid scales, like a suit of armor against other big predators, maybe even against others of its own kind. This wasn't just some evolutionary quirk. It was a heavy defense system, making Hyneria a real force to be reckoned with in the water. But it's the fins that really fascinate me, especially when I think about the long story of evolution. Unlike the ray-finned fish we see all the time today, with their delicate, bony supports, Hyneria had these distinctive, lobe-shaped fins. Fleshy, muscular things with a central skeletal element that connected right to where you'd expect a humerus or pelvic girdle to be. Seeing that structure, those pectoral and pelvic fins, it's hard not to see the resemblance to the limb bones of the early tetrapods, the four-legged creatures that would eventually walk on land. Hyneria was an aquatic animal, no doubt, but those fins, they speak of the innovations happening in the Devonian period. I imagine it using them not just to swim, but to carefully move through complex underwater environments, maybe even to push itself up along the river bottom or hold steady in a strong current. Those muscles in the fins would give it so much more control and power than simple rays could, allowing for quick, precise movements when it was hunting. Hyneria gives the impression of a predator perfectly suited to its time. It had the weapons, the armor, and a body plan that hinted at the incredible future of vertebrate life. It lived in the freshwater rivers and estuaries of the late Devonian, a period from about 374 to 359 million years ago. They call it the Age of Fishes, and for good reason, with so many different kinds of aquatic vertebrates filling the waters. But it was also a time when the land was changing dramatically. The first forests were appearing, giant club mosses, horsetails, and ferns creating these lush, damp environments, a stark contrast to the barren landscapes that came before. The air wasn't quite as oxygen-rich as it would be in the Carboniferous period, but it was enough to support these new stable ecosystems. And these new ecosystems on land had a big impact on the water. As plant matter and sediment washed into the rivers, they created nutrient-rich waters. The fossil deposits where Hyneria has been found, like the Catskill Formation, tell a story of ancient floodplains, winding rivers, and delta systems, much like the Amazon or Mississippi deltas we know today. The climate back then would have been warm and humid, supporting a diverse array of aquatic life in Hyneria's river. Other creatures shared those waters, armored placoderms, fish covered in heavy plates, formidable predators themselves, though maybe not as agile as Hyneria. There were also smaller ray-finned fish, early sharks, and other lobe-finned fish, some of them more closely related to the line that would eventually lead to tetrapods. And those early tetrapods themselves, the first amphibians or fishopods, were starting to appear, tentatively exploring the shallows and maybe even venturing onto the muddy banks. These first land explorers would have been a tempting meal for a predator as large as Hyneria. The water was probably murky with sediment, the rivers filled with sunken logs and vegetation, perfect for ambushing prey. The ecological relationships in these environments were complex, a web of predators and prey, with Hyneria sitting firmly at the top of the food chain, a powerful presence in a world that was rapidly changing, both in and out of the water. Considering its size, the power of its jaws, and those impressive teeth, Hyneria was clearly the apex predator in its freshwater home. It probably hunted with ambush tactics and explosive bursts of speed. I picture it lurking in the murky depths, hidden among the flooded plants or along the riverbank, its dark scales blending into the shadows, waiting for the right moment. When a suitable prey came within reach, maybe a large placoderm or even one of those early tetrapods venturing into the shallows, Hyneria would unleash a sudden, powerful surge, propelled by its muscular tail. Its wide mouth would open, revealing rows of dagger-like teeth, clamping shut with tremendous force. Those large, sharp teeth were perfect for piercing and holding on to slippery prey, preventing any escape. Its strong skull and jaw muscles would allow it to exert a significant bite force, enough to subdue even heavily armored fish. And the smaller teeth on the roof of its mouth suggest that once captured, the prey would be further secured and manipulated before being swallowed whole or in large chunks. Hyneria's diet would have mainly consisted of other large fish, given the abundance of different species in the Devonian. But it's also very likely that it hunted those early tetrapods, those transitional vertebrates that were just beginning to explore the shallow waters and muddy shores. Even if they weren't fully terrestrial yet, they would have been vulnerable targets for such a large aquatic predator. Imagine a giant, a true titan of its time. Hyneria was more than just a big fish. She was a formidable giant of the late Devonian, a powerful freshwater predator that commanded her ancient riverine domain. She would have played a decisive role in shaping the dynamics of her ecosystem, keeping populations of other large fish in check. Her movements would have been powerful and deliberate, capable of navigating strong currents, perhaps even moving between different bodies of water during floods. She was a dominant hunter, inspiring respect due to her size and the effectiveness of her predatory skills. Hyneria holds a crucial place in the evolutionary narrative of life on Earth, as a sarcopterygian, a lobe-finned fish. She belongs to the same group from which all tetrapods eventually arose, including amphibians, reptiles, birds, and mammals, ourselves included. Though Hyneria herself wasn't a direct ancestor of land vertebrates, she represents a very successful and well-adapted branch of this lineage. Her existence in the late Devonian, a turning point in life, the monumental leap from water to land, is especially important. The internal skeletal structure of her fleshy fins, with their strong bones homologous to the limb bones of early tetrapods, serves as a powerful illustration of that evolutionary path. These fin bones, though part of an aquatic appendage, contain rudimentary elements that, over millions of years, were modified and improved into load-bearing limbs capable of supporting the body on land. Hyneria shows us how these features were already present and functioning in a fully aquatic environment, providing a preliminary adaptation to terrestrial locomotion. Studying Hyneria and other lobe-finned fish from this period helps paleontologists understand the environmental press and anatomical changes that facilitated the transition from water to land. This demonstrates that the development of limb-like structures didn't occur suddenly, when vertebrates decided to walk on land, but rather developed gradually in the aquatic environment for purposes such as navigating complex underwater terrain, confronting currents, or perhaps even ambushing prey. Heineria is a powerful reminder of the profound connection between aquatic and terrestrial life and enduring evidence that the forces of natural selection transform over vast stretches of geological time. Her fossils offer invaluable information about one of the most defining moments in the history of life on Earth, shedding light on the anatomical and ecological context from which our own distant ancestors emerged. The discovery and subsequent study of her unique anatomical features have provided important information about the world of the Devonian period, and more importantly, about the grand narrative of vertebrate evolution. As a lobe-finned fish, she was a relative, albeit a distant one, of the very line that would eventually emerge from the water onto land, preparing the soil for the incredible diversity of terrestrial life we see today. The story of Heineria is a vibrant chapter in the ancient history of the Earth, a testament to the incredible forms life has taken in its long journey of diversification and adaptation, reminding us of the deep connections that bind all living beings across the vast expanses of geological time. Now picture a world where the air hummed with the buzzing of colossal insects, where the ground beneath your feet was trampled by not only naive reptiles and amphibians, but also by invertebrates of truly astonishing proportions. This was the Carboniferous period, a time between approximately 359 and 299 million years ago, often referred to as the Coal Age, because of the huge deposits of fossilized plant matter that define it. And among the most impressive inhabitants of this lush, oxygen-rich era was Arthropleura. This was no ordinary centipede, not the small, scurrying creature you might find under a log today. Arthropleura was a true titan of the world of terrestrial invertebrates, a segmented behemoth that could stretch longer than an adult human. A living, breathing, multi-legged testimony to a period of unprecedented gigantism in arthropods. Its very existence defies our modern understanding of how large terrestrial invertebrates can grow, suggesting a fascinating look back at a time when environmental regulations seemed different, and the scale of creepy, crawling creatures reached truly epic proportions. His legacy continues to intrigue scientists and enthusiasts, making us reflect on the unique conditions that allowed such an incredible creature to thrive. The story of Arthropleura's discovery goes back to the Victorian era, a time of turbulent scientific research and a growing fascination with the Earth's ancient past. The first recognized fossil remains of Arthropleura were described by the eminent British paleontologist Henry Woodward in 1882. These initial discoveries, often fragmentary, were made in the rich coal deposits of Europe, especially in countries such as England and Germany, where ancient coal swamps left behind a wealth of fossilized life. The enormous size of the segmented body plates and tracks indicated that they belonged to an invertebrate of truly unprecedented proportions. Over the following decades, further discoveries were made both in Europe and across the Atlantic in North America, particularly in regions known for their coal seams. These findings included more complete, articulated segments of the exoskeleton, as well as fossilized traces. To imagine the largest terrestrial invertebrate that ever walked the Earth, I have to start with its size. We're talking about something up to 8.5 feet long, almost like a small car stretched out on the forest floor, and nearly 18 inches wide, enough to cover my entire torso. I find it hard to wrap my head around that. The traces of these creatures, diplonites and auropals, are especially important. They give us direct evidence of how these huge beings moved across the ancient landscape, sometimes leaving trails that stretched for many feet. Paleontologists, like myself in a way, carefully collected these fragmented remains, piecing together a puzzle to reveal the true scale of this giant arthropod. Each new fossil discovery refines our estimates of its length and width, offering clues about its body and movement. The excavation is often difficult as fossils are found in dense, brittle shells and sandstones associated with coal deposits. But the scientific reward is enormous. The combined data paints a clear picture of Arthropluera as the largest land invertebrate known to science, contradicting modern ideas about arthropod size. Ongoing study of these fossils continues to provide insight into the unique environment that allowed such gigantism to flourish during the Carboniferous period. Its body, like a modern millipede, was highly segmented, with overlapping plates forming a strong exoskeleton. The segments weren't perfectly round, but somewhat flattened, giving Arthropluera a pancake-like appearance from above. This would have helped it navigate the dense undergrowth of coal swamp forests, gliding through tangled vegetation. Each segment likely had several pairs of legs, maybe 40 to 70 pairs, providing a wave-like motion for locomotion. The exoskeleton itself was made of chitin, reinforced with calcium carbonate, providing protection and structural support. This armor would have been a necessary defense against early amphibians and reptiles. Though head and mouthpart fossils are rare, reconstructions show a relatively small head with jaws for processing plant matter. Arthropluera, like other arthropods, breathed through spiracles and tracheal tubes, delivering oxygen directly to its tissues. The effectiveness of this respiratory system, especially with the high atmospheric oxygen levels in the Carboniferous period, is often cited as the key factor that allowed it to reach its colossal size. Without that efficient oxygen saturation, such a large invertebrate couldn't have survived. Arthropluera flourished in the vast humid swamp forests of the Carboniferous period, a time known for its extensive coal deposits, essentially the fossilized remains of colossal vegetation. Imagine an incredibly dense jungle dominated by towering club mosses like lepidodendron and sigillaria, some reaching over 100 feet. Giant horsetails and abundant ferns filled the undergrowth, thick with decaying plant matter. The climate was warm and humid, ideal for lush plant growth. Much of what is now temperate North America and Europe lay near the equator, contributing to this warmth and humidity. The elevated levels of atmospheric oxygen were another important environmental factor. Estimates suggest oxygen concentration during this period could reach 35%, significantly higher than today's 21%. This hyperoxic atmosphere would increase the efficiency of arthropods' respiratory systems, allowing oxygen to penetrate deeper into tissues and support large body sizes. Imagine a scorpion, not the kind you might find scuttling under a rock today, but one 2.5 meters long. A true giant. That was Pulmonoscorpius, an integral part of an ancient ecosystem, a creature that challenges our modern ideas of how big insects and arachnids can be. It reminds us that life on Earth has taken many incredible forms throughout its long history. When I study creatures like Pulmonoscorpius, it's not just about describing ancient monsters. It provides invaluable data for understanding evolutionary biology, paleoclimatology, and paleoecology. By studying its anatomy and comparing it with modern scorpions, scientists can learn a lot about its behavior, its predatory tactics, and its ecological roles. The fossil record, though incomplete, is a window into the past biodiversity and the processes that have shaped life on Earth. Pulmonoscorpius, therefore, is a powerful symbol of the deep history of the Earth, a time when the very air allowed the emergence of giants of invertebrates. These creatures dominated their niches before the world changed and a new set of rules came into play. Its history is a testament to the dynamic, constantly changing nature of life on our planet and how environmental factors can shape the very form and function of its inhabitants. I often find myself imagining the sensory world of Pulmonoscorpius. Scorpions are known for having poor vision, relying instead on vibrations detected through specialized hairs on their legs and body. But a scorpion of this size would likely have an increased ability to detect tremors and movements. Its vast array of sensory hairs would give it a detailed map of its immediate surroundings, allowing it to locate prey with amazing accuracy, even in the dark and cluttered undergrowth of the coal forest. Its powerful claws would have been used not only to subdue prey, but also to dig burrows that provided shelter from the elements or from any larger emerging predators. These burrows would be strategic locations for ambushes, allowing Pulmonoscorpius to get ahead and surprise its unsuspecting victims. A heavy exoskeleton would provide significant protection, making it a formidable enemy for anything smaller than itself and difficult prey for larger predators. The sheer mass and strength of such a creature would make it an unmistakable presence on the Carboniferous forest floor. This Carboniferous ecosystem, with all its exotic nature, was governed by the same ecological principles that still operate today. There were producers, huge forests, primary consumers, herbivorous arthropods, and early vertebrates, as well as various levels of predators. Pulmonoscorpius occupied a high position in this food web as a formidable land predator. Its diet likely included numerous millipedes, such as smaller relatives of Arthropura, and a diverse range of terrestrial insects that were also present during the Carboniferous period. The sheer biomass of these smaller arthropods would have been staggering, providing an energy base for such a large predator. The process of decomposition in swamps, creating coal, also contributed to the preservation of these ancient creatures, giving us the rare opportunity to study them. The history of Pulmonoscorpius is inextricably connected with the history of the Carboniferous period itself, a time of unique ecological conditions which contributed to the extraordinary surge of gigantism among terrestrial arthropods. It remains a fascinating figure from deep time, a being that pushes the boundaries of our imaginations of what is possible in the natural world. Ongoing research into Pulmonoscorpius and other coal arthropods continues to shed light on the mysteries of this ancient world. Advances in imaging technology allow paleontologists to study fossils in greater detail than ever before, sometimes even revealing internal structures. Comparative anatomy with modern arthropods helps refine our understanding of their physiology and behavior. The discovery of new fossil sites, although rare, may provide additional fragments of information that help complete the picture. Pulmonoscorpius, known by one key find, exemplifies the importance of each fossil find, no matter how fragmentary it may be, in the reconstruction of the Earth's deep past. It's a reminder that life is incredibly adaptive and can thrive in conditions that would otherwise be inhospitable or impossible for modern forms, creating a rich tapestry of biodiversity over geological time, which is truly awe-inspiring. The sheer size of this scorpion isn't just a curiosity. It's an important piece of evidence in the great puzzle of life's evolutionary path. The ancient world, especially in the Devonian and Carboniferous periods, was a time of profound change and flourishing life. Among the most significant inhabitants of this transitional era were creatures broadly grouped as labyrinthodonts. This wasn't a formal taxonomic category, but rather a fascinating collection of early tetrapods, representing a turning point in vertebrate evolution, the transition from water to land. The name labyrinthodont alludes to one of their most distinctive features: their teeth. When cross-sectioned, these teeth revealed a complex folded structure of enamel. Those ancient labyrinthodonts, those first amphibians, their teeth tell a story. I've seen the cross-sections in old papers, the intricate folding of enamel and dentin, a miniature labyrinth built for one purpose: to hold on tight. It's more than just a curiosity. It's a window into their world, a testament to their predatory lives. These creatures, perched between water and land, fascinate me. Their ancestors were lobe-finned fish, the Sarcopterygii, with their fleshy, muscular fins containing skeletal elements. It's a lineage that, over millennia, transformed into the very limbs of terrestrial vertebrates. Creatures like Eusthenopteron, Panderichthys, and most importantly Tiktaalik offer glimpses into this transition. They possess strong pectoral fins, skulls that were flattening, and even rudimentary necks, allowing them to move their heads independently. Tiktaalik, perhaps, could prop itself up, peering above the water's surface. Still mostly fish, but ready for a revolution. Then came the true labyrinthodonts, Ichthyostega and Acanthostega, the first tetrapods, a mosaic of fish and amphibian. They possessed limbs with fingers, a defining characteristic, but also powerful tails with fins and, in some cases, internal gills, a clear sign of their continued dependence on water. Ichthyostega, for instance, had 7 fingers on its hind limbs and a heavy skeleton, suggesting it could drag itself onto land, perhaps to bask in the sun or move between bodies of water. Acanthostega, with 8 fingers and more aquatic skeletal features, was likely even more tied to the water, using its limbs to maneuver through shallow, vegetated swamps rather than for extensive land journeys. But both were predators, without a doubt. Their powerful jaws and labyrinthine teeth were perfectly suited for grabbing fish and other aquatic organisms, making them apex predators in their transitional world. The Carboniferous period, the Coal Age, was their time. A world so different from our own. Warm, damp, with vast swampy forests of lycopod trees and giant horsetails, and an atmosphere rich in oxygen. This lush environment provided an abundance of food, from fish and other aquatic life, to a thriving insect population, some reaching enormous sizes, dragonflies with wingspans of 70 centimeters. It was the perfect stage for labyrinthodonts to become dominant predators. Within this group, different lineages emerged, each with its own adaptations and ecological roles. Early forms like Ichthyostega were mostly semi-aquatic, clinging to the water's edge. But over time, the temnospondyli rose to prominence. A remarkably successful and diverse group, they ranged from small salamander-like creatures to massive giants the size of crocodiles. Ariops, a well-known temnospondyle from North America, was a fearsome predator, reaching 2 meters in length. Its broad, flat skull, powerful jaws, and strong limbs suggest it was an ambush hunter, lurking in shallow water or along the banks, ready to snatch any unsuspecting fish, smaller amphibians, or large invertebrates that came within reach. Others, like Mastodonsaurus, were even larger, reaching 5 or 6 meters, almost entirely aquatic, dominating Triassic freshwater ecosystems as colossal fish eaters. The diversity within temnospondyli speaks to their adaptability. Some were clearly adapted to a fully aquatic life, with flattened bodies and strong tails, while others developed more robust limbs and vertebral columns, allowing them to spend more time out of the water, though they still needed to return to lay their eggs. In parallel, another significant group was developing, the anthracosaurs. These labyrinthodonts are especially important from an evolutionary perspective, because they are considered more closely related to the lineage that would ultimately lead to reptiles. While many anthracosaurs, like Archaea, were aquatic predators, others, like Simuria, showed more terrestrial adaptations. Simuria, though technically still an amphibian due to its larval stage, possessed a remarkably reptilian skeleton, with strong limbs and a more efficient spinal column for supporting its weight on land. It was a stocky, powerful animal, likely an active land predator, hunting insects and other small vertebrates. The existence of creatures like Diadectes, an anthracosaurian labyrinthodont that was surprisingly herbivorous, highlights the range of ecological niches these early tetrapods began to explore, demonstrating that not all labyrinthodonts were exclusively meat eaters, even if the vast majority were indeed formidable predators. Their anatomical features were so well suited to their predatory existence in the swamps and ponds of the Paleozoic era. Their teeth, with that intricately folded enamel and dentin, provided exceptional strength and resistance to breakage, essential for holding slippery, struggling prey. Conical and often slightly curved, they provided a secure grip. And the skulls of many labyrinthodonts, wide and flattened, especially in aquatic forms, allowed them to open their mouths wide and generate significant bite force. Imagine walking along a coastline, the waves crashing against jagged rocks, and knowing that beneath your feet lie secrets to one of the most monumental shifts in life's history. That's what I feel when I think about the Joggins fossil rocks in Nova Scotia. It was here, amidst this dramatic landscape, that we found Hylonomus lieli, one of the earliest undisputed reptiles. This discovery marks a turning point, the final break from the aquatic existence of the amphibians that came before. The labyrinthodonts, those early amphibians, their bodies, though perhaps clumsy by our standards, were actually quite effective. They could move in the water and even support themselves on land for short periods. Their pelvic and shoulder girdles were well developed, securing their limbs and providing leverage, but they were still tied to the water. Like modern amphibians, they laid their eggs in water, and these eggs hatched into larvae, much like tadpoles with external gills. These larvae would then undergo metamorphosis, losing their gills and developing lungs, allowing them to breathe air as adults. This dependence on water for reproduction limited their terrestrial range. They couldn't venture too far from water sources. Their skin, while offering some protection, was likely permeable, requiring a moist environment to prevent drying out. In the water, they possessed a lateral line system, similar to fish, allowing them to detect vibrations and movements. As they spent more time on land, their dependence on vision and, perhaps, hearing increased. These Paleozoic predators inhabited freshwater environments, sluggish rivers, vast swamps, and ephemeral bodies of water. Their diet consisted mainly of fish as well as other, smaller amphibians and a growing variety of terrestrial invertebrates. They were apex predators in many of these ecosystems, facing little competition from other terrestrial vertebrates in the early stages of their evolution. Being ectothermic, they relied on external sources of heat to regulate their body temperature, basking in the sun along the water's edge or diving into cooler water to avoid overheating. But their reign was not destined to last. The onset of the Permian period brought significant environmental changes. The vast wet coal swamps of the Carboniferous period began to dry out, leading to drier conditions. This climate shift was devastating for creatures so dependent on wet environments and standing water to reproduce. And then came the amniotes, descendants of the anthrosaur line. They possessed a revolutionary amniotic egg, an egg enclosed in a protective shell containing a self-contained aquatic environment for the embryo. This freed vertebrates from their dependence on external bodies of water for reproduction. This was the beginning of reptiles, their better adaptation to land life, including better water retention and more efficient locomotion, giving them a significant competitive advantage over labyrinthodonts. The Permian Triassic extinction event, approximately 252 million years ago, dealt the final blow to many labyrinthodont lineages. While some managed to survive until the Triassic, their overall diversity and dominance weakened, their ecological niches increasingly filled by rapidly diversifying reptiles and later by crocodiles. Modern amphibians are believed to be the direct descendants of labyrinthodonts, but the precise phylogenetic relationship between these modern groups and the ancient labyrinthodonts remains a subject of ongoing scientific debate. Despite their final decline, labyrinthodonts represent one of the most important chapters in the history of life on Earth. Their fossilized remains, discovered in places ranging from the Joggins coal swamps in Nova Scotia to sites across Europe, North America, and Australia, provide invaluable information about the transition from water to land. They were pioneers, the first vertebrates that truly began to explore the earthly world, driven by their predatory instincts. Their legacy lies not only in their unique biology, but also in the very foundation they laid for the subsequent evolution of all terrestrial vertebrates, transforming ancient landscapes and setting the stage for the incredible ecosystems we see today. They were amphibians, predators who dared to come out of the water and thereby forever changed the course of life. The SCO World Heritage Site holds secrets from a time when ancient forest thrived. I've spent countless hours studying the Carboniferous fossils found there, marveling at their preservation. Vertical petrified tree stumps, some reaching several meters high, became natural traps, and within these stumps, animals were quickly buried under sediments, protected from scavengers and decay, preserved in minute detail. It was in the 1800s within these very stumps that Scottish geologist Sir William Dawson, often working alongside Charles Lyell, made groundbreaking discoveries. Lyell's name, of course, is immortalized in the species name Hylonomus lyelli. These finds, set against a landscape of towering ancient flora, painted a vivid picture of a world long gone, offering undeniable proof of the transition to terrestrial life for vertebrates. Hylonomus itself was a modest creature, only about 20-30 centimeters long, including its long, thin tail. It would have looked strikingly similar to a modern lizard, with a small head, a lithe body, and 4 splayed limbs, but this seemingly ordinary physique concealed its extraordinary evolutionary importance. Its skeleton was light yet strong, perfectly adapted for a life spent running and navigating the difficult terrain of those ancient coal swamps. Its limbs, though still somewhat sprawling, were structurally more efficient for land movement than those of its amphibian contemporaries. The vertebral column was more specialized for supporting weight on drier land, providing better support against gravity. The skull was relatively small, housing sharp, conical teeth that suggest its diet. While its precise classification within early reptile groups remains a topic of debate, Hylonomus is generally considered an early anapsid, meaning its skull lacked temporal fenestrae, openings characteristic of later reptiles. Nevertheless, it represents a lineage that eventually diversified into all modern groups of reptiles. This agile creature was a predator, its diet consisting primarily of the abundant invertebrate life of the coal forests. The warm, humid conditions fostered a rich ecosystem where insects, centipedes, and other arthropods flourished, some reaching impressive sizes. Hylonomus, with its small, sharp teeth, would have been well equipped to seize these invertebrates, using its speed and agility to stalk its prey among the fallen logs and dense undergrowth. Its habitat wasn't open plains, but the deep, moist interior of those coal swamp areas, an environment rich in decaying vegetation and sheltered nooks. Those very hollow tree stumps that eventually became its tomb were also likely places of refuge, providing shelter. Now, let's consider another fascinating creature from a slightly later period, a Dilophosaurus. Unlike the small and agile Hylonomus, a Dilophosaurus possessed a remarkable sail on its back, supported by bony spines. This sail, I believe, played a crucial role in its survival. One of the most accepted theories revolves around thermoregulation. Like modern reptiles, a Dilophosaurus likely relied on external sources of heat to regulate its body temperature. Like any environment, it experienced fluctuations between cooler mornings and evenings and hotter midday periods. A large surface area, such as the sail, rich in blood vessels, would have acted as an effective radiator. By orienting its sail toward the sun, a Dilophosaurus could quickly absorb solar energy, warming its blood, and therefore its body, allowing it to become active faster after a cool night. Conversely, if it became too hot, it could orient its sail away from the sun or position itself in the shade, allowing excess heat to dissipate. This passive form of temperature control would have been a significant advantage for a large, probably somewhat slow-moving herbivore in a world without air conditioning. Beyond thermoregulation, the Dilophosaurus's sail could have also served as a display structure. In the animal kingdom, complex anatomical features are often used for communication, whether to attract mates, intimidate rivals, or signal alarms to predators. A brightly colored or distinctly patterned sail could have been a visual signal for other Dilophosaurus individuals, possibly indicating reproductive fitness, social status, or even warning of potential threats. While we can only speculate about the color of the sail, it's not unreasonable to imagine it decorated with striking patterns or bright colors, especially considering the presence of bony crossbars that could anchor complex skin folds or pigmentation. Such a display would have made a Dilophosaurus an unmistakable figure in its environment. Another, less common but still plausible theory suggests a protective role for the sail. Although it may seem illogical that a large, thin structure could serve as a primary defense, the tall, seemingly massive outline could have scared off predators, making the animal appear larger and more menacing than it actually was. Predators of the Permian period, such as the formidable Dimetrodon, which ironically also possessed a sail, albeit structured differently and likely serving a similar thermoregulatory purpose, might have been more hesitant to attack a creature that presented such an impressive silhouette. However, it's generally believed that the main functions of the sail were thermoregulations and display, with any protective function being secondary. Moving on from its impressive sail, the rest of the Dilophosaurus's anatomy speaks volumes about its lifestyle. It was a large animal. Some species reached a length of about 10–12 feet, making it one of the largest land animals of its time. Its body was stout and bulky, which suggests a capacious gut necessary for digesting tough plant material. The limbs were strong and splayed out to the sides, giving it a sprawling gait characteristic of early tetrapods. It would have moved slowly but steadily, traversing the Permian landscape in search of food. The skull of Adaphosaurus is especially fascinating and provides the clearest evidence. I sometimes find myself thinking about teeth, especially those unlike anything we see today. Imagine a mouth not filled with sharp, pointed teeth, but with a collection of blunt, peg-like teeth arranged like a paved street. That's the mouth of Adaphosaurus, an early synapsid whose very name hints at this unusual dental structure. This unique arrangement was perfectly suited for crushing and grinding the tough plant material that made up its diet. I picture it munching on ferns, cycads, and other low-growing vegetation that carpeted the Permian landscape. This dietary specialization is quite remarkable, especially considering many other large herbivores of the time were far more generalized in their feeding habits. Even the jaw structure of Adaphosaurus points to its plant-based diet. Its lower jaw was strong, and the articulation of its jaw joints suggests a powerful bite capable of pulverizing fibrous plants. The muscles attached to its jaw would have been substantial, enabling the long periods of chewing needed to break down cellulose. Digestion, I imagine, would have been a slow process, likely aided by symbiotic microorganisms in its intestines, much like those found in modern herbivores. The world Edaphosaurus inhabited was vastly different from most terrestrial ecosystems we know today. During the late Carboniferous and early Permian periods, vast swamp forests covered much of the supercontinent Pangaea. These were humid, warm environments, teeming with lush vegetation, including towering lycopods, ferns, and early conifers. I can almost see Edaphosaurus moving through these dense plant communities, probably preferring the softer, more easily digestible parts of the plants. Its large size meant it would have been a significant browser, consuming substantial amounts of vegetation each day to fuel its metabolism. Edaphosaurus wasn't alone in this ancient world. It shared its habitat with many other fascinating creatures, perhaps most notably Dimetrodon. Dimetrodon was another synapsid with a sail on its back, but unlike Edaphosaurus, it was a formidable predator. While Edaphosaurus grazed peacefully, Dimetrodon likely hunted a variety of animals, including fish, amphibians, other reptiles, and perhaps even young Edaphosaurus. The presence of both a herbivore and a sail-backed carnivore in the same ecosystem, each potentially using their sails for similar thermoregulatory purposes, highlights the evolutionary press at play during the Permian period. Other inhabitants included various amphibians, early reptiles, and smaller synapsids. The interactions between these diverse groups would have formed intricate Permian food webs, with Edaphosaurus serving as a vital link, converting plant matter into a food source for carnivores. The evolutionary significance of Edaphosaurus cannot be overstated. It belongs to a group of synapsids known as cassaids, characterized by their generally large barrel-shaped bodies and small skulls. More broadly, Edaphosaurus was a pelycosaur, a paraphyletic group of early synapsids that represents some of the earliest steps in the lineage leading to mammals. While Edaphosaurus itself isn't a direct ancestor of mammals, it shares a common ancestor with them. The study of its anatomy, particularly its skull and dental features, provides invaluable insight into the evolutionary paths that led to the diversification of synapsids and, ultimately, the emergence of mammals. Its specialized herbivorous adaptations, for instance, represent an early exploration of a dietary niche that would become incredibly successful in later groups of mammals. The Permian period was a time of remarkable evolutionary experimentation, and Adaphosaurus stands as a testament to the diverse forms that arose during this pivotal era in Earth's history. The reign of Adaphosaurus, like that of many other Permian creatures, eventually came to an end. It disappeared from the fossil record long before the Permian-Triassic extinction, one of the most catastrophic mass extinction events in Earth's history. Its extinction was likely part of a larger pattern of floral turnover and environmental changes that occurred throughout the Permian period, possibly due to climate change or shifts in vegetation that no longer favored its specialized adaptations. So, Adaphosaurus was much more than just a strange-looking creature with a sail on its back. It was a key figure in the ecosystems of the early Permian period, a large, specialized herbivore that played a crucial role in the food web. Its unique anatomy, especially its sidewalk teeth, speaks volumes about the evolutionary press and opportunities that existed at a time when life on land was undergoing significant diversification. Studying Adaphosaurus allows us to peer back millions of years into a world very different from our own. A world where the seeds of mammalian evolution were sown, and where creatures of remarkable form and function roamed the ancient landscapes. It remains a compelling example of the ingenuity and diversity of life on Earth, evidence of the incredible adaptations that can arise in response to environmental challenges and opportunities over vast stretches of geological time. Its sail, often depicted as its most iconic feature, is not just a visual marvel, but also a window into its ancient physiology and behavior, inviting us to imagine the lives of these unusual early mammalian relatives. Long before Tyrannosaurus rex roared, even before Triceratops grazed, another set of apex predators ruled the terrestrial landscapes. I find myself often thinking about them, these creatures whose very name evokes images of mythical beasts and deadly force, the Gorgonopsids. They weren't dinosaurs, not in the way we typically think of them, and they weren't true reptiles like lizards or snakes. Instead, they belonged to a separate group of synapsids, part of the evolutionary line that eventually led to mammals. These saber-toothed killers of the late Permian period sat atop the food chains of their time, wielding muscular builds and keen senses of smell. The first Gorgonopsid fossils emerged from the Karoo Basin in South Africa, a region incredibly rich in Permian and Triassic fossil deposits. These finds, dating back to the late 1800s, identified a striking, previously unknown group of predators. Sir Richard Owen, a prominent figure in 19th-century paleontology, described the first remains, though the full extent of their diversity and ecological significance only became apparent with subsequent discoveries by paleontologists like Robert Broom and Sidney Houghton, who carefully excavated and studied the vast Permian fossil layers. The name Gorgonopsid itself comes from the Gorgons, mythical monsters from Greek mythology, particularly Medusa, with her snake-like hair and petrifying gaze. Richard Owen chose this name in 1876, perhaps as a way to ward off the creature's terrifying appearance, especially its fangs, which must have seemed monstrous to those early paleontologists. What really distinguished the Gorgonopsids, immediately marking them as apex predators, were their teeth. They possessed an incredibly distinctive and formidable dental system, dominated by a pair of extremely elongated saber-like fangs in the upper jaw. These fangs, which could reach several inches in length in the larger species, were serrated at the edges, making them exceptionally effective at cutting through flesh and bone. These weren't just big teeth, they were finely tuned instruments for dispatching prey. Below these impressive sabers were smaller, sharp incisors in the front of the jaws for pinching and tearing, and then smaller, more blade-like post-canine teeth used for shearing meat. This specialized dentition indicates a highly carnivorous diet and complex hunting strategy. The skull of the Gorgonopsid was generally strong and deep, built to withstand the stresses of a powerful bite. A large opening behind the eye sockets, known as the temporal fenestra, provided ample space for the attachment of powerful jaw muscles that allowed for those destructive bites. These fenestrae are a key feature of synapsids, indicating more developed jaw muscles compared to earlier reptiles, a characteristic shared with their mammalian descendants. Their skulls were often quite narrow at the top but deep at the sides, presenting a smooth yet powerful profile, clearly designed for effectiveness in predation. Beyond their impressive dental arsenal, Gorgonopsids were built for speed and strength. Their bodies were typically sleek and muscular, ranging in size from small forms just a few feet long to truly colossal creatures like Inostrancevia, which could reach lengths of over 10 feet and weigh as much as a polar bear. Their limbs were relatively long and columnar, positioned more directly under the body than the sprawling limbs of earlier tetrapods. This semi-erect posture likely allowed them to move more efficiently, maintaining high speed and endurance while chasing prey. Their feet were equipped with claws that provided a secure grip, aiding in fights with enemies. The tail was usually short, suggesting it wasn't a primary organ for movement or balance during fast running. Unlike the sprawling legs of many other tetrapods, their limbs were adapted for fast running. Within the world of Gorgonopsids, there was surprising variety. Though they all resembled saber-toothed predators, their sizes and probable ecological roles differed widely. Some of the smaller species likely hunted small reptiles, amphibians, and even early mammals. Larger Gorgonopsids, such as Gorgonops itself and the truly enormous Inostrancevia from Russia, would have been apex predators capable of taking on very large prey. Inostrancevia, in particular, represented the pinnacle of Gorgonopsid evolution in terms of size and predatory specialization. Its skull could reach over a foot in length, and its fangs were truly terrifying weapons. How did these saber-toothed predators hunt? Though we can't observe them directly, fossils and comparative anatomy allow us to reconstruct their probable hunting strategies. The large canines suggest their method of attack involved a deep, penetrating bite, possibly aimed at the throat or sides of large prey. The serrations on their teeth could have helped them saw through muscles and blood vessels, causing serious injury and rapid incapacitation. It's believed that gorgonopsids may have used a hit-and-run strategy. They would inflict a debilitating bite and then retreat, waiting for the victim to weaken from blood loss before finishing the kill. Their powerful jaws and neck muscles would have allowed them to hold down struggling prey once they had a firm grip. The prey of the gorgonopsids would have been those inhabiting the late Permian period. Imagine a time long before the dinosaurs. The Permian period, when life on Earth evolved in ways that seem both remarkable and at times bizarre. I often think about what it must have been like, a world where the continents were joined as one, a supercontinent called Pangaea, and the climate was often harsh. Among this ancient landscape, there was a creature that ruled with iron claws and menacing fangs, an apex predator so formidable it would give even the most fearsome modern carnivores pause. They were called gorgonopsids, a name that sounds as menacing as the beast itself, the Russian terror dominating its ecosystem. These gorgonopsids shared their world with many herbivores. There were the large, clumsy pariasaurs, armored reptiles that wouldn't have been easy prey, and various species of dicynodonts, plant-eaters ranging from small, burrowing creatures to massive, rhinoceros-like forms, like the well-known Lystrosaurus. After the gorgonopsids faded, Lystrosaurus even became dominant. Gorgonopsids, in their various sizes and forms, likely hunted a wide range of prey, much like modern predators occupying different ecological niches. Heightened senses, especially smell, were vital for finding prey in those ancient landscapes. They thrived in diverse habitats, from the semi-arid plains of what is now South Africa to the more temperate regions of modern Russia, using their abilities to the fullest. The late Permian was a time of significant ecological change. Pangaea was forming, leading to vast continental expanses and drier conditions. Yet, large river systems, floodplains, and wetter regions still supported lush vegetation and a rich diversity of herbivores. The gorgonopsids likely patrolled these areas, impacting the behavior and evolution of the animals around them. They were the largest land predators for much of the late Permian, a role later taken by archosaurs and, eventually, the dinosaurs. Their evolutionary significance is enormous. They represent an important stage in the development of mammals. Gorgonopsids belong to the therapsids, a group of synapsids more advanced than the earlier pelycosaurs like Dimetrodon. Therapsids had features pointing toward their future as mammals: a more upright limb position, a larger temporal part of the skull, and often more specialized teeth. The gorgonopsids, with their developed predatory adaptations, were at the forefront of therapsid evolution in the late Permian. Though not direct ancestors of mammals, they're part of the same vast lineage. Studying their remains gives us essential insights into the development of this amazing world. The stages of evolution and the anatomical changes that eventually led to true mammals represent a fascinating story. It demonstrates how complex predatory forms could evolve within the synapsid lineage long before the dinosaurs. Unfortunately, the reign of the gorgonopsids, like so many magnificent creatures, came to a dramatic end. They fell victim to the Permian-Triassic extinction, also known as the Great Dying, the most severe mass extinction in Earth's history about 252 million years ago. It's estimated that it wiped out 96% of marine species and 70% of terrestrial vertebrates. The causes are still debated, but likely involved massive volcanic eruptions in the area now called the Siberian Traps. These eruptions led to global warming, ocean acidification, and other consequences that drastically impacted the Earth's ecosystem. The Gorgonopsids, successful predators for millions of years, were vulnerable to this large-scale environmental crisis. As their prey populations declined and ecosystems destabilized, they couldn't adapt quickly enough. They disappeared from the fossil record, giving way to new dominant groups in the Triassic period. Their disappearance marked the end of an era when these impressive, saber-toothed synapsids ruled the Earth. The legacy of the Gorgonopsids, though often underestimated compared to dinosaurs, is enormous. They represent a crucial chapter in the history of life, demonstrating the power and diversity of early reptiles. These synapsids were amazing creatures, their saber-like teeth a symbol of the never-ending arms race between predators and prey that shaped evolution for hundreds of millions of years. By studying their fossil remains, paleontologists continue to reveal new details of their lives, their interactions with other Permian creatures, and their tragic demise. These saber-toothed predators weren't just ancient beasts, they were complex parts of complex ecosystems. Their existence paved the way for the mammals we see today, reminding us that the story of life is full of remarkable and often unexpected turns. Their story serves as a powerful reminder of both the incredible resilience and the inherent fragility of life in the face of monumental geological and environmental upheavals. Imagine a creature the size of a modern grizzly bear, but with a set of predatory tools far more formidable. That's Inostrancevia, a true giant among its relatives, reaching up to 12 feet from nose to tail and weighing perhaps 800 pounds. As a geologist, when I first encountered this creature, the scale of it struck me. Its remains, discovered in the Arkhangelsk region of Russia in the late 1930s near the Dyna River, opened a window into a world hidden for hundreds of millions of years. This area proved to be a trove of Permian fossils. These fossils provided unprecedented insight into the forms of life that flourished just before the greatest mass extinction event in Earth's history. What made the find so remarkable was the completeness of the skeletons. It allowed scientists to reconstruct a surprisingly accurate picture of this ancient beast, much more complete than many of its contemporaries. This completeness was decisive, laying the foundation for understanding its anatomy, lifestyle, and place in the complex networks of Permian life. Inostrancevia belonged to a group called Gorgonopsians, a type of therapsid. Now, therapsids are incredibly important because they represent a crucial evolutionary step in the line that eventually led to mammals, including us. They weren't completely mammalian, but they had many mammalian features that distinguished them from the more reptilian life forms prevalent at that time. Gorgonopsians in particular were dominant predators of the late Permian period, occupying a niche that much later would be occupied by large theropod dinosaurs such as Tyrannosaurus rex. The most striking feature of Inostrancevia, and indeed all Gorgonopsians, was its skull and dentition. Its head was powerfully built with strong jaw muscles designed to deliver a crushing bite. But it was its teeth that truly distinguished it as a super predator. It possessed a set of enormous, dagger-like fangs, often called saber teeth, similar in function to those of later saber-toothed cats. These fangs could grow to a remarkable size, protruding significantly from its upper jaw, perhaps up to 6 inches in length. They weren't just for show. They were instruments of death designed to deeply pierce the flesh of prey, causing massive trauma and blood loss. Behind those fearsome fangs, Inostrancevia had smaller but still sharp serrated teeth for tearing and cutting flesh. This combination of powerful jaws and specialized teeth indicates a highly efficient killing machine perfectly adapted to its predatory lifestyle. The skull itself was relatively narrow but deep, providing excellent leverage for its bite. Its nostrils were positioned quite high on its muzzle, a feature that may indicate the ability to breathe while its muzzle was partially submerged in water, or perhaps simply an adaptation for its powerful bite. In addition to its impressive dental arsenal, the body plan of Inostrancevia further strengthened its image as a powerful hunter. It had a strong, muscular build with powerful limbs that supported its considerable weight. Its posture was more upright than many of its reptilian contemporaries, which suggests a more agile and perhaps even faster gait than that of the sprawling reptile. Although we cannot know for certain, it is quite possible that Inostrancevia, like other therapsids, could have had some form of insulating cover, possibly wool or fur, a feature that would become a defining characteristic of mammals. This insulation would be useful for thermoregulation, especially if it were an active, warm-blooded, or at least endothermic predator. Its tail was relatively short, balancing its body and probably helping in maneuverability during pursuit or fighting with prey. Its legs were probably equipped with claws that provided grip and helped subdue their victims. Everything in its skeletal structure, from its powerful shoulder girdles to its strong hind limbs, speaks of a creature created for strength and speed, a hunter capable of killing substantial animals. The late Permian period, approximately 250 million years ago, was a time of significant environmental shifts. Pangaea was still intact, and the vast interior of this supercontinent must have experienced extreme temperatures and arid conditions in many places. However, fossil evidence shows that Inostrancevia lived in regions that were probably somewhat more moderate, possibly with seasonal rains and a combination of forests and more open savannas. When I first encountered the story of Inostrancevia, I was struck by its sheer scale. Here was a creature patrolling ancient landscapes, a Russian superpredator whose fossilized remains whispered tales of a world long gone. Imagine, a sable-toothed predator, larger than any land carnivore we know today, ruling the earth millions of years before the dinosaurs rose to prominence. The landscapes where Inostrancevia roamed, like the Dina River area, suggest a world teeming with life, crucially dependent on freshwater sources for both predator and prey. The flora was dominated by seed ferns, conifers, and cycads, a stark contrast to the flowering plants we know today. These plants sustained a diverse range of herbivores, which in turn became the food base for predators like Inostrancevia. As a top predator, Inostrancevia would have targeted the largest herbivores of its time. Its size and formidable teeth indicate a diet of large and medium-sized pariasaurs and dicynodonts. Picture a slow-moving scutosaurus, heavily armored, trying to fend off an attacking Inostrancevia. Those sable-like fangs were perfectly designed to inflict deep, penetrating wounds, bypassing even the thickest armor, severing large blood vessels and muscles. It likely ambushed its prey, using powerful legs for a short, brutal burst of speed. A well-aimed bite from those massive fangs could quickly incapacitate or kill a large herbivore. Inostrancevia wasn't built for endurance, but for decisive, powerful attacks, relying on strength and deadly weaponry to subdue its victims. Its protruding teeth would have inflicted massive trauma, allowing it to quickly and effectively dominate its prey. This ecosystem was a constant dance between hunter and hunted. Inostrancevia wasn't alone, though it was likely the dominant predator. Fossil layers reveal other, smaller gorgonopsians, along with various amphibians and reptiles. While these might have competed for smaller prey or scavenged Inostrancevia kills, none posed a real threat to a fully grown adult. The landscape itself was a patchwork of dense vegetation near water, transitioning into drier plains. Inostrancevia likely patrolled these plains and forests, always vigilant for its next meal. Its senses, especially its sense of smell, would have been incredibly sharp, helping it track prey over vast distances. Powerful vision would have aided in spotting prey during the day. Life was a continuous cycle of hunting, feeding, and defending territory. Its sheer size meant Inostrancevia needed a significant amount of food to sustain itself, implying a large home range and a stable prey population. The evolutionary significance of Inostrancevia and the Gorgonopsians cannot be overstated. As therasids, they represent a crucial branch in the line leading to mammals. While not mammals themselves, they possessed anatomical features foreshadowing mammalian traits like a more upright posture, a more efficient respiratory system, and potentially a higher metabolic rate than modern reptiles. Inostrancevia, as the last and largest of the Gorgonopsians, stands as evidence of this predatory group's success. They reigned at the top of the food chain in the late Permian, showcasing a very effective predatory specialization. Their dominance for millions of years underscores their evolutionary skill and adaptability. However, their reign eventually met a catastrophic end, the end Permian mass extinction, sometimes called the Great Dying. This ecological catastrophe, occurring approximately 252 million years ago, was far more severe than the extinction that wiped out the dinosaurs. It's estimated that up to 90% of all marine species and 70% of terrestrial vertebrates perished. The causes are still debated, but massive volcanic eruptions in the Siberian traps are widely believed to be the primary driver, releasing vast quantities of greenhouse gases and aerosols into the atmosphere. This led to rapid climate change, ocean acidification, and widespread anoxia, a lack of oxygen in the oceans. For Inostrancevia and its contemporaries, this meant a rapidly deteriorating world. The ecosystems they relied on collapsed, their food supply dwindled, habitats were destroyed, and the air and water became toxic. As a top predator, Inostrancevia would have been particularly vulnerable. Apex predators in food chains are often the first to suffer during ecological collapse, as their survival depends on the health and abundance of the entire food web beneath them. With its large size and specialized dietary needs, Inostrancevia simply couldn't adapt quickly enough to these cataclysmic events. And so the mighty Inostrancevia, this Russian superpredator, vanished from the face of the earth, leaving behind only fossilized remains as evidence of its formidable existence. The paleontological importance of Inostrancevia is immense. Its discovery and the study of its fossils have provided invaluable insights into the Permian period and the evolution of synapsids. It represents the pinnacle of predator evolution in the late Permian, demonstrating just how specialized and efficient these proto-mammalian predators could be. Understanding Inostrancevia helps us piece together the complex food webs of the Permian period, revealing the intricate interactions between different species. The history of life on Earth is so much richer and more varied than just the age of dinosaurs. It's fascinating to consider periods when mammal-like reptiles, not true reptiles, dominated the land. Creatures like Inostrancevia sevi, a flagship species that has become cemented as one of the most fascinating creatures that ever walked the earth. Returning to the late Permian period, roughly 254 to 252 million years ago, I'm struck by the contrast between predators like Inostrancevia and creatures like Scutosaurus. While Inostrancevia relied on speed and sharp teeth, Scutosaurus was a master of passive defense. It was enclosed in a shell of bone plates, a slow-moving fortress against the most dangerous carnivores of the time. Scutosaurus, whose very name means shield lizard, was built for survival in a world teeming with formidable predators. Its story, much like that of Inostrancevia, is intertwined with Russia's rich fossil deposits. The first Scutosaurus remains were discovered in the late 1920s, around 1922 to be exact, near the city of Isad in the Arkhangelsk region, not far from the Dina River. This area, already renowned for its Permian fossils, yielded numerous, often remarkably complete, skeletons. These initial discoveries and subsequent excavations were crucial, providing paleontologists with an unprecedented understanding of this unusual animal. Paleontologists like Vladimir Prorovich Amalitsky, who spearheaded much of the early work along the Dina River, played a key role in bringing Scutosaurus to the attention of the scientific world. The relatively complete skeletons allowed for detailed reconstructions, giving scientists a clear idea of its morphology and lifestyle. These Russian finds made Scutosaurus one of the best-studied large pariasaurs, a cornerstone for understanding this group of ancient reptiles. The discovery of several individuals in the same area even hints at potential social behavior, though definitive evidence remains elusive. So what did Scutosaurus actually look like? Imagine a creature growing up to 2.3 meters, or about 8 feet long, exceptionally wide and heavy. It was low-slung, with a squat body and short, thick legs supporting its considerable weight. A large Scutosaurus could weigh between 600 and 1,000 kilograms. That's roughly 1,300 to 2,200 pounds, making it an extremely heavy animal for its size. Its head was large and square with a thick skull, often adorned with bony bumps and ridges, especially around the eyes and on the cheeks. These cranial decorations weren't just for show. They provided additional protection to vital areas, but the defining characteristic was, of course, its extensive skin armor. Its entire back and sides were covered in rows of bony scutes or osteoderms embedded in its skin. These plates varied in size and shape but formed a continuous interconnected armor, much like a crocodile's scales or a turtle's shell, but more integrated into the skin. This armor made Scutosaurus a truly formidable target, earning it the nickname of a tank-like herbivore. This armor wasn't just a surface covering, it was an integral part of its defensive strategy. These osteoderms were composed of dense bone, providing excellent protection against the piercing fangs of gorgonopsians like Inestranavia. While a predator could inflict a bite, it would be incredibly difficult to inflict a fatal wound through those thick bone plates. The placement of the armor allowed for some degree of flexibility, allowing the animal to move, albeit slowly, while maintaining its protective covering. Short, stocky limbs and the wide body contributed to its stability, providing a low center of gravity that made it difficult to tip over. Its tail was relatively short and thick, probably not used for active defense, but perhaps as a counterweight. The overall impression was one of enormous strength and stability. I often wonder what it must have been like to see a Scutosaurus in its natural habitat. To witness that armored creature, so clearly designed to withstand attacks rather than evade them. Its teeth, small and leaf-shaped, always fascinated me. They lined the edges of its jaws, perfectly adapted for cutting through the tough plant material that dominated the Permian period. Seed plants, ferns, cycads, and conifers. Its jaws, while not as strong as a carnivore's, were capable of a powerful crushing action, necessary for processing those large amounts of plant matter. The skull was wide at the back, providing ample attachment points for the strong jaw muscles it needed to chew those tough plant fibers. Its digestive system, I imagine, would have been quite the marvel, probably containing symbiotic microbes to break down cellulose, much like modern herbivores. Scutosaurus, a bulky, venomous animal, relied on consuming massive volumes of vegetation to sustain its large body. It must have spent a significant portion of its days slowly moving across the landscape, constantly chewing on whatever plant life it could find. The landscape where Russian Scutosaurus fossils have been found suggests a world of floodplains, river systems, and a mosaic of wetlands and drier areas. I imagine Scutosaurus preferred the areas closer to water, where vegetation would have been more abundant. The climate, seasonal and changeable, with periods of extreme heat and perhaps some precipitation. The Permian flora, different from what we see today, would still have provided enough food for a large herbivore like Scutosaurus. I picture it moving slowly, eating low-growing plants, perhaps occasionally rearing up on its hind legs to reach slightly higher vegetation. Its sheer size would have deterred smaller predators, but the massive gorgonopsids posed a constant threat, making its armor indispensable. Imagine herds of Scutosaurus lumbering across the Permian landscape like living fortresses. Their numbers would have provided a degree of collective defense. For such slow and cumbersome creatures, defense was paramount. The armor was its primary form of protection, making it virtually invulnerable to all but the most determined predators. When faced with a threat, a Scutosaurus probably crouched low, exposing its armored back to the attacker. The thick osteoderms would absorb and deflect most blows. Even the most powerful bites would have difficulty penetrating its defenses. Its wide, flat body would also make it difficult for a predator to capture or turn it over, and its enormous size was a deterrent in itself. Though it lacked the speed to outpace attackers, its passive defense made it a difficult prey. The survival strategy of Scutosaurus was based on stability and endurance, a testament to the effectiveness of heavy armor in a world of large, toothy carnivores. While there's little direct evidence of social behavior, the discovery of several individuals in the same fossil sites, sometimes in close proximity, opens up the possibility that they lived in groups, at least for part of the year. Many large herbivores today live in herds for collective protection, and it's reasonable to assume Scutosaurus could have done the same. A herd of armored giants would be an even more terrifying prospect for a predator than a single individual. Groups could look after each other, and the combined mass and armor could have created a nearly impenetrable barrier. However, without more evidence, this remains speculation. Even if they didn't live in permanent herds, they might have gathered around water sources or lush feeding areas, forming temporary aggregations. Scutosaurus coexisted with a multitude of life forms, including the very predators it sought to avoid. The most noticeable threat would have been the large gorgonopsids, especially Astrenvia, which inhabited the same Russian habitats. Other large predators, such as Tithonasuchia, a group of large, somewhat crocodile-like therapsids, could also have posed a threat. Young or weak, Scutosaurus would have been more vulnerable, but healthy adults would have been incredibly difficult to overcome. Scutosaurus also shared its habitat with other pariasaurs, some of which were even larger, as well as various species of dicynodonts, rhynchosaurs, and amphibians. The ecosystem was a vibrant, complex web of interdependencies where each species played its role in the great tapestry of Permian life. As a dominant herbivore, Scutosaurus would have been a vital link in the food chain, converting vast amounts of plant material into biomass, supporting the predatory guild above it. From an evolutionary perspective, Scutosaurus is a vital member of the pariasaurs, which in turn belong to a broader lineage called Parareptilia, a group of ancient reptiles distinct from the line that led to modern reptiles like lizards, snakes, and crocodiles. Pariasaurs were a successful group of terrestrial herbivores in the late Permian, characterized by their heavy armored bodies and blunt leaf-shaped teeth. Scutosaurus, as one of the largest and best-known members, provides key insights into the evolution of herbivory and protective armor. The Scutosaurus. Even its formidable armor couldn't protect it from the greatest cataclysm in Earth's history, the end Permian mass extinction. I find myself often pondering this event, which occurred about 252 million years ago. It was utterly devastating. It wiped out the vast majority of life on our planet. Massive volcanic eruptions in the Siberian traps triggered rapid and extreme climate change, ocean acidification, and a widespread ecological collapse. For the Scutosaurus, this meant the destruction of its food sources as plant life struggled to survive in the altered conditions. The rivers and floodplains it relied on may have dried up or become toxic. Its heavy armor, while excellent protection against biological predators, offered no defense against atmospheric poisoning or ecological collapse. As a large herbivore, the Scutosaurus required a huge amount of food. With plant ecosystems collapsing, it simply couldn't sustain itself. The food web collapsed, and the world that the Scutosaurus knew simply vanished. This magnificent, armored, herbivorous tank, a master of survival over millions of years, disappeared, leaving behind only its fossilized heritage. The paleontological significance of the Scutosaurus is truly enormous. Its remarkably complete fossil record has allowed scientists to reconstruct its anatomy, draw conclusions about its diet, and understand its defensive strategies in great detail. It serves as a striking example of a heavily armored herbivore from the Permian period, providing crucial data for understanding the evolutionary process that led to such adaptations. Studying the Scutosaurus helps us reconstruct the Permian ecosystems of Russia, giving us a more complete picture of ancient food webs and the interactions between different groups of animals. This also contributes significantly to our understanding of the broader group of parareptiles and the early evolution of reptiles. I've read that scientists have even studied the growth rings in its bones, drawing conclusions about its growth rate and longevity, adding another layer of detail to its life story. The Scutosaurus is a testament to the incredible diversity and ingenuity of life before the age of dinosaurs. It demonstrates a time when armored herbivores roamed the land, providing food for equally fearsome predators. In popular culture, the Scutosaurus often appears in images of the Permian period, especially in documentaries and museum exhibitions that aim to illustrate the diverse and sometimes strange life forms that existed before the Mesozoic era. Its unique appearance, with its massive body and prominent armor, makes it easily recognizable and a fascinating creature. It symbolizes stability and passive defense in the face of danger, a sharp contrast to the active hunting of its modern predators. The scientific community continues to study the Scutosaurus, exploring new research directions such as paleohistology, studying the microscopic structure of its bones to gain further understanding of its biology, physiology, and behavior. Each new discovery strengthens our understanding of this truly ancient and remarkable armored giant, allowing us to paint an even more vivid picture of the world in which it once lived. The Scutosaurus, the living tank of the Permian, reminds us of the rich tapestry of life that has evolved on our planet, demonstrating a stable and successful evolutionary strategy for survival in a complex historical world.